Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're starting a brand new fanfic, which is what if Naruto was neither an Uzumaki nor a Namikaze, and ended up in a harem with Kushina and a female Kyuubi. Part 1. If you enjoy this story, please like the video, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you want a part 2. Now, let's begin the fanfic. The whole populace of the Uzumaki clan looked at the cloaked form of their very own Uzumaki D. Naruto in shock, after a year being on his year-long mission. The man before them didn't look like he changed one bit from the year that had passed by. The only true differences they could see different about him was the facial features of his face. His eyes had flecks of a golden yellow within them. The last thing was the aura he expelled. It was like nothing from a year ago. The last time they were around him, his aura just felt so chaotic and uncontrollable. Like a ticking time bomb ready to explode, but now his aura just showed how calm he was. It's like not even if an attack happened would change his posture one bit. Though many recognized the cloak on his body since it was the same one from that man. The man who has most of the hidden villages on edge, but to them was in reality a living legend. Linking the two together, many went wide-eyed or just plain lost their posture. Iroh was in the same predicament. Here his adopted nephew just returned. Only to look just like the very man that is the most wanted shinobi in the elemental nations. Looking at Kushina's smiling face, Naruto grinned before looking around himself to see the shocked crowd of his clan and gave a wave. Yo! With that, the most casual wave from probably the most dangerous man in the elemental nations, made the whole Uzumaki clan face fall all in unison. Seeing this, not only Kushina, but Naruto both outright laughed. Ha 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 ha. 2 hours later, Iroh's office. Okay, let me get this straight here, you. Iroh said, pointing at Naruto's cloaked form, who was holding his Masumi on his lap, who at the moment was actually asleep at the moment. It had only been 2 hours since his arrival, and already the clan was tremendously happy to see Naruto again. Even the shinobi tried to get to him and ask how he had been holding up since his departure from the clan. Kushina had none of that, since she just wanted him to herself, and she did by pulling him away from them all, leaving a dust trail in her wake. Right now he had been told of Naruto's actions during the time he was gone, and right now he was trying to grasp the fading reality that was true and what was not true. For the things his nephew had done was just so insane. Not only have you been training in isolation for the entire year, but also been coming in and out of hiding to not only kill off Iwa and Kumo's armies that have been nesting in our borders, but also been killing Konoha's own shinobi. Why in Kami's name did you do that? He said, confused yet again for why his nephew did such a thing. Of course he knew of Naruto's hate for Konoha and their history of lies and betrayed agreements with them. Ever since Naruto read the treaty between them and Konoha, and them trading over Mito in the past to the Shadaime as the balance for the treaty. Naruto's hate for them had been very strong, especially since the Shadaime not only had her chained down to him in marriage, he had used Mito as a leverage to control the Uzumaki in some way. Hell, he couldn't blame Naruto really, since he too hated Konoha, but couldn't destroy the treaty since it was the only thing keeping them from total destruction. If it wasn't for that, he would have destroyed that treaty long ago. Grinning, Naruto spoke, "You want the truth or just the lie that makes it more entertaining?" Oh yes, there was also that. Naruto's attitude changed also. He was more of a joker now, being as sarcastic as Kushina is sometimes. Sighing, he waved his hand. The truth, boy, and don't leave anything out, which made Naruto's aloof posture quickly change to the same demeanor Iroh knew a year ago. There's the Naruto I remember. Well, it's because they've outright broke the treaty. They did it without the Uzumaki clan knowing, getting a shocked look from Iroh. How? What did they do? Worried yet bubbling anger started to build up within him. He too had an anger towards Konoha that was slowly growing each passing year. The reason? Trying to have him deliver his Masumi to them as a form of peaceful negotiations, but he knew the truth of what they would do. It would be the exact same thing the Shadaime did with Mito, and he wouldn't let that shit happen again. Though when he looked at Naruto's face he saw him looking at Kushina, sleeping form with a solemn look. That's when the reason Naruto had been doing such things came crashing down on him. Don't tell me, they've actually been sending their armies here to threaten us to hand over Kushina, didn't they? He said, rubbing his temples in irritation. Naruto just nodded firmly with a hand running through Kushina's hair, making the girl sigh happily. Yes, that's right, plus given the fact they've been sending countless Anbu to try and track me down hasn't helped either. I don't know what they're planning, Iroh-sama, but it's gonna be big, he said with a serious look on his face. The man nodded before looking at Naruto with a calculative eye. Naruto, what do you think are our chances if indeed Konoha attacks? Which made Naruto close his eyes in thought. After a few minutes, he opened his eyes and spoke. Well, I'd say we could handle them, but it's the problem if they did attack Kumo and Iwa might take that chance to take us out. Let's not forget Suna's feelings toward us during the war, so they too might join the fight if it ever happens, which made Iroh frown. So many of their enemies would take the chance in helping against such an attack. Now if all these villages attack us all at once, we wouldn't survive such a force, getting a nod from Iroh. That is when the man gave a serious eye to Naruto, making the 10-year-old supernova eyes widen. Naruto, I want you to listen to me very carefully. If such a thing happens, I want you to get Kushina and flee from here. I won't risk having either one of you dying, with a look saying he wouldn't take a no for an answer. But I can still fight. If I were to use all my abilities to their fullest, then I could possibly pull out a win. Trying to change Iroh's decision. Only to his fear, Iroh shook his head with a small sad smile. No, you've done so much for this clan, Naruto, that I've come close to making you the heir of the clan. Getting shocked look from Naruto, but he continued. But you and Kushina's lives are not only important to me, but the whole Uzumaki clan itself, and I won't have you two dying so early in your life. That's when all the retort Naruto could say died in his throat and replaced by acceptance. If you're sure about this, but there's still the chance this might not happen. He said, only to get a look from Iroh saying, I'm not stupid, Naruto. Naruto, you as well as I know it's gonna happen or will in the future, but now I have no doubt in my mind they will come, and especially if they find out you've returned, only for Naruto to drop his head in defeat. Single quote. Fine, he said, raising his head up to look at Iroh. I'll honor your words and do it just in case this happens, which made Iroh smile. Thank you, Naruto, but now would you do me a favor and release that henge when you get the chance? I wanna see the true you. Making Naruto blink in surprise before chuckling. Seems I can't keep anything from you, can I? Well, I can't really. Making Iroh blink in surprise. What do you mean you can't? It's just a henge, right? Nothing to worry about, right? With a suspicious look on Naruto, who at the moment just chuckled. Well, let's just say I'm stuck like this. It was a mistake on my part, for when I tried to apply my gravity seals a few months ago, it did something. From what I theorized, it held back my physical structure of growing any more. Well, that is until a few days later they will break. He uttered lowly at the end, but Iroh caught it. Okay, and what will happen once they do break? Only to get a hesitant look from him. Well, let's just say when they do, the area around myself will turn into a giant crater. Let's just say that he, only for Iroh to look at him curiously. And what, pray tell, do you have those gravity seals on? Which made Naruto try while failing to look away from Iroh. Well, last I checked it was 100x, he said so low that a mouse wouldn't pick it up, but the Uzumaki clan had heard him. Loud and clear, might I add. 100xxxx. Iroh stuttered with his mouth open in shock while his eyes could possibly fall out at any moment. 100x was said to be impossible for any human, since it would break their bones and crush their organs to dust. Though right here, in front of him, Naruto, the first ever Z-rank shinobi in the bingo book, had those kind of seals on him and still moving. Of course only Naruto would be able to do something like that. Shaking his head in exasperation, he asked one last question. Well, how about you tell me your training you went through over the last year? I'm curious, which was true. The things Naruto does to get stronger would put any shinobi, whether they be Kage or not, into deep exhaustion or downright a coma. Well, I've worked on my nature manipulation. Despite how good it was a year ago, I wanted it better, so I did a little experimenting and now gotten all three of my elements of Suiten, Raiden and Futon on levels I think is appropriate for now. My physical training has went great. From what you heard and seen in the bingo book, the ultimate test was with me fighting the Hachibi, he said, making Kyuubi within Kushina's seal perk up even more in attention as well as Iroh's. A test? The Hachibi was just a test to your physical strength, Iroh said with a disbelieving look on his face. Naruto just nodded. Yeah, that fight was pretty hard. Had to release all my seals to take the Biju down, but I won't say it wasn't fun. Fighting that Biju was so exhilarating, he said with childlike amusement. This boy fights a Biju, wins and finds it fun. Sweet Kami above. So the fight is true. So Naruto-kun exceeded even my own expectations. I wonder how he would fare against me, he. Why are you looking at me like that? He said, which Iroh just shook his head in silent amusement. No matter how strong Naruto was, he just kept getting stronger and stronger, so he just finally gave up trying to figure out the puzzle that was Naruto. Nothing. What else did you train in? He said, curious about other parts of Naruto's training. I mean, the man in front of him swatted armies of shinobi like flies and brought down a Biju with pure physical strength, so he was a tad bit curious. Well, I also worked on my speed. Because of my tall stature, I would need the speed to counterbalance my strength, and I did. Right now I've got multiple seals on my body that have been acting as weight for both my speed and chakra. Right now, if I was to take those seals off, I honestly don't know how much chakra I'd have, since I've never taken them off before except with the fight against the Hachibi. Though at that time I was only concentrated of getting out of that Amari attack, he said at the end. I see, and what else? Iroh said, trying really hard not to faint right there. Kyuubi wasn't any better. The female Biju was having a hard time seeing Naruto as a strong mortal and not a Biju in disguise. Well, the last thing I worked on was my Kenjutsu and fine-tuning it to perfection, yet I have not found a suitable weapon ever since the last weapon snapped in half. But I did find one ability of mine I discovered a while ago. It was similar to what I did a year ago, against the Tsuchikage and Raikage, he said, getting a surprised look from both Iroh and Kyuubi, who still wondered how Naruto was able to pull off such a feat. How? Was the one word Iroh said, and Naruto just rose up his left hand before a blue sphere appeared around it. It had some kind of static running around it. Iroh looked at Naruto with a questioning look and got his answer. I don't know much of this ability, Iroh. It may have come from my birth parents or maybe a hidden bloodline, but all I know is that this right here is the key to figuring out the rest of what I did that day. With that, the sphere disappeared like it wasn't even there, making Iroh and Kyuubi both confused at such an energy. Well, what did that sphere do? Which made Naruto look away sheepishly. Narrowing his eyes, he spoke. Naruto, what does that sphere do? Making Naruto sigh, closing his eyes. Do you remember the incident about 6 months ago, when the mountains of Tsuchi no Kuni were devastated? Getting a firm nod from Iroh. Yes, it was reported 3 whole mountains that signified the land being called the Land of Earth were totally destroyed. They never found out what happened, though it was said a sound of something breaking before the mountains were destroyed. That's right, and that was me. I was testing out that sphere with my physical strength added, and that was the results of me punching the mountain, he said, making Iroh gape before finally losing it. The man just fainted while Kyuubi was repeating the words Naruto just said over and over again, before a giant grin came up on her face as she looked at Naruto's form with a strange look in her crimson-slitted eyes. Oh yes, if you did, I wonder how much stronger you'll get. It's already seen Kushina will be your mate, but I do wonder, will you be worthy enough for a Biju, I wonder? Oi, Iroh. Wakey wakey. Naruto said comically, slapping Iroh in face, trying to wake the man up, only to his failure he wasn't. Hanging his head low, Naruto looked at Kushina in his arms and smiled. Well, I can always talk to him later, because I think you need your sleep, Kushihime, he said before giving her a kiss on the cheek. He picked her up before shifting her form a bit till he had her in a bridal carry with her, using his chest as pillow. With that he walked away to find her room and put her to bed. 1 week later with Naruto. It's been a week since Naruto's return to the Uzumaki clan, and things have been normal and peaceful for the clan and Uzu no Kuni as a whole. The blonde had been spending his time mostly with Kushina since she had been very clingy to him. Though he didn't mind really, since he had missed her greatly over the year he was gone. So yeah, he didn't really mind the fact they held hands walking side by side, or the fact he held Kushina on his shoulders during the time he was back. Though he would hear rumors from his fellow clansmen of his relationship with Kushina, but he didn't deny them, neither did Kushina. They were too young for the more adult things, but that didn't mean they couldn't hug or hold each other. Though right now we could find Naruto at the moment cursing his luck, for now his peaceful return just got shot to hell. His return somehow was leaked from Uzu no Kuni by a spy from Kumo. The man was quickly killed by him, but the damage was done and all of the elemental nations knew he was back. And that meant chaos would follow. And it did. I can't believe this, Naruto shouted as the people around him were in a similar state, just not as vocal. Around him were the high officers of the Uzumaki army and their government. Many would think they would be snobbish, stuck up, but no. They were quite the opposite, and Naruto was friends with each one of them since he himself had taken the rank of his father Ryu as the first commander of the Uzumaki army. Right now all of them had serious looks on their faces, as did Iroh. They just received reports of what Naruto predicted to come true. Iwa, Kumo and Suna joined forces and were heading their way to Uzu no Kuni so they could wipe them out for good. The one that reported was soon killed along with his squad from the invading force. Iroh closed his eyes in thought before speaking. Naruto, I told you when you came here that if this were to ever happen, do you remember what I told you to do? He said, making Naruto grit his teeth in anger, yet the growing sadness of what Iroh was implying. Everyone else was already informed if this were to happen, and to the shock of Naruto agreed with Iroh. They just couldn't let them get him or Kushina. Damn it. I didn't want this to happen. God damn it, this place is my home. I can't leave it when it's gonna be destroyed. Only for Iroh to slap him across the head. Shut up, Baka. We know how important the clan is to you, but you have something more important to worry about. I've never told you, Naruto, but I will now. You and Kushina are what the Uzumaki clan symbolize. You both are what we will be leaving behind when we die, he said, making Naruto's eyes go wide before closing them to hide his emotion. You both will be our legacy to the world. I know how you feel about her as she feels about you. Even if you're not Uzumaki by blood, you're Uzumaki in everything else, Naruto, and I would be damn proud if you were the one Kushina lived with, since I know you would protect her with your life, he continued with a prideful smile on his face. The others just smiled as well. Naruto looked at them all before bowing his head in defeat. But, first Ryu, now the clan, he uttered, which they all heard and felt for him. The boy, their clan's pride, was losing everything before him, first his adopted father and now soon his clan. Though they never did see the slight glimmer in Naruto's eyes, but they did hear his next few words. Very well, I'll be taking our leave right now, he said, but they felt the underlying message in his words and frowned. Naruto's gonna do something crazy again. Iroh looked at the back of his nephew with worry, but acceptance showing brightly in his eyes, knowing Naruto would do everything in his power to protect Kushina and give her the life she needs. Clan head compound -1 hour later. It had been an hour since Naruto left to prepare his and Kushina departure from Uzu no Kuni, but even now the burning anger for what was happening to his home burned within him. His hate and anger toward those that were invading grew even more. It was starting to make him tremble in anxiety to not just use everything in his power to wipe them all out. But then he would without a doubt destroy Uzu no Kuni as well. Having the storage scrolls sealed up with all of his belongings, Naruto walked into Kushina's room to see the little kunoichi in training studying her fuinjutsu. Looking up from the massive piles of scrolls, Kushina grinned. "Oh hey Naruto-kun, I'm just reading up on some late-night fuinjutsu study before I got to bed. Promise not to tell To-san, okay?" She said slowly at the end when she saw the serious look in Naruto's eyes. "Kushina-chan, we have to leave. I'll explain later, but right now it's important if we left right now," and the reaction he predicted came. Kushina's eyes widened before crawling out of the piles of fuinjutsu scrolls and ran up to him with a curious look on her face. "What are you talking about? What's wrong?" she said, worried of what Naruto was talking about. Sighing, Naruto shook his head. "I'm sorry, but I don't have time to explain, but all I can say is that by the order of Uzumaki Iroh, I am to escort you out of Uzu no Kuni and keep you safe from now on, as your eternal guardian," he said formally. Flashback 30 minutes earlier. "Naruto, by my order, I ask you to take Kushina away from here and to protect her with your life," he said, standing in front of his nephew in front of the Uzumaki clan compound, as the shinobi and protectors of the clan all rushed pasted them to the gates to prepare for the battle. They both didn't Kushina to hear the sounds, so Naruto placed a silencing seal on the compound so she wouldn't hear the noises from the outside. Looking at his adopted uncle, Naruto sighed while looking at the massing forces of the Uzumaki clan. "I don't have a choice. I accept, but is there anything you want me to give her, anything at all?" he said, looking at the armored Iroh, who was now prepared for the battle that will undoubtedly end in his death. Closing his eyes, Iroh formed a small sad smile on his face. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a scroll with the Uzumaki insignia and a small locket. The second item caught Naruto's attention, and looking at Iroh confirmed his suspicion. "You want me to give her this? I'm guessing you won't go see her again, will you?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Iroh just chuckled sadly and shook his head. "Nah, I can't. If I did, I'd probably have doubts about leaving her, but this is for the best," which made Naruto look away and close his eyes. Very well, it shall be done. I'll have her and leave in a few minutes." Naruto, thank you. Flashback end. Shaking his head of the recent thoughts, he looked down to see Kushina's confused yet worried face. Why is To-san ordering me to leave? Did I do something wrong?" she said, tears welling up in her eyes. Quickly he pulled her into a hug and spoke. "No. You've done nothing wrong. If anything, it's my fault that this is happening," he said quietly, but the redhead heard what he said perfectly and frowned in thought. "How is it Naruto-kun's fault?" I have a theory that Naruto's return has been leaked to the other countries by someone, and now the Uzumaki clan's enemies have reared their attention back onto the clan itself. But if that's true, then what's this got to do with what To-san is doing? Well, Kushi-chan, I am only running on a theory here, but from what I can see that something big is happening, and Iroh wants you and Naruto out of Uzu no Kuni as fast as possible. But the question is, what's going on? Kushina. Hearing her name, she shook her head to see Naruto looking at her with a stern yet saddened gaze. "I'm sorry, it's because of me that this is happening. No doubt Kyuubi-san has told you of what it thinks is going on, but right now we have to get moving." With that, he got a hesitant nod from her and started to seal all of her belongings. Her fuinjutsu scrolls, ninja tools, books and scrolls for Nin-ken-tai Genjutsu. After which he sealed up all of those scrolls into a secondary scroll and placed it into his vest pouch. Kushina watched all of this with her worry growing stronger with each passing second, since Naruto's face was showing signs of worry and anger. Something she rarely ever saw on his face before. Seeing everything safely sealed away, he turned to Kushina and crouched down with his back facing her. "Okay, Kushina-chan, get onto my back and hold on tight, for we will be going very fast," he said, not seeing the look of extreme worry on the harem of the Uzumaki clan's face. Feeling the oncoming disturbance to the compound, he yelled, "Hurry, Kushina!" She quickly jumped onto his back, wrapping her arms around his neck while he held her legs firmly, and then with a mighty jump, He leapt out of the compound just in time before the compound itself to quickly explode in a fiery blaze of shrapnel and burning wood. Kushina snapped open her eyes to see her once upon a time compound and home destroyed, burning in what seemed like an explosion. That's when the sounds of fighting and screams of battle reached her ears. So scanning the area, all she saw from what she could see was the shinobi of her clan fighting shinobi of either Kumo, Iwa and Suna. All around from what she saw was fire and destruction left in the wake of the massive battle that was in front of her. That's when she spoke. What's going on here? I was right. Damn. What's happening, Q-chan? It would seem that my theory was correct. And Iwa, Kumo and even Suna have come to attack and completely annihilate the clan forever, and try and kill Naruto-kun here. Realization came into her eyes and looked worryingly at Naruto. Is that why father ordered for them both out of Uzu no Kuni? To get away from the invading force? Is that why Naruto blames himself for what is happening to their home? The baka. Naruto scowled at seeing all the destruction in front of him. The sky itself was pitch black in color from all the smoke of the fires rising into the sky. The scent of blood filled his nose and the sense of death all around him. The pain-filled screams of his fellow clansmen filled his ears as well as those explosions of his home getting destroyed. Naruto-kun, look out, she said, making him snap his eyes open only to curse loudly. Fuck. Before jumping over a Doden jutsu aimed right at him. That's when he heard the crunching of multiple footsteps, and from the gasp filled full of terror from Kushina he knew it had to be bad. Well, Luki here, it's him, a voice dripping with venom and arrogance. Naruto scowled at what was in front of him while Kushina on his back wrapped her arms even tighter at what she was seeing, while Kyuubi inside the seal growled in anger. For in front of the three was two brigades, one for Iwa and the other for Kumo, and at their respective leads was one masked men for both brigades with a kanji for Anbu commander in front of them. Naruto looked over the countless enemies upon countless enemies of both Iwa and Kumo and growled. I see now. Iwa and Kumo used Suna as bait to draw me out and have both Iwa and Kumo divert their whole attention on me, bastards, he uttered, which Kushina heard but was too terrified to speak. Ha ha ha. You're completely outnumbered this time, you monster. Even if you have the power to wipe out armies this time, you've got the whole forces of both Iwa and Kumo right in front of you with both the Raikage and Tsuchikage not too far away. There's no hope for you this time, said the tiger-masked Anbu leading the Iwa brigade. Seeing the inevitable battle, Naruto looked over his shoulder at Kushina with a solemn look before the sounds of her sniffles and muffled crying reached his ears. With that, the dwindling flames blazed up once again while something around him just expelled, making the whole area somehow start to shake. Kushina-chan, whatever you do, don't let go of me, this will be one hell of a ride, which made her nod while wrapping her legs around his waist as tight as she could. With that, he looked up at the arrogant looks from all the enemy shinobi in front of him and spoke, now. I'll show you why I'm so feared. He yelled before raising his right hand, which was circled by a blue sphere of some sort. Then with a mighty swing he punched, the air itself making a slight tremor erupt and the sound of glass breaking echo around the area. A moment of silence followed. Ha! What was THAAAAAATTTT? He never got to finish before a massive shockwave erupted from where the punch came from. The shockwave crashed into the shinobi forces like a god smiting its prey with a swipe of his hand. Some of the shinobi had the luck of getting out of the way of the attack, but, to the horror of many and the silent look of awe from Kushina and Kyuubi, the once massive army of the two brigades of Iwa and Kumo's finest was left with nothing more than 2/3 of their forces, with them all left in disarray. A massive trench was in front of Naruto, with it going on for about 30 miles, with it being 10 miles in width. But the blast radius was much different. It was showing immeasurable size, with all that was in front of that one punch nothing but devastation in its path. Trees uprooted, the ground turned to dust, and half a mountain clearly destroyed. Among the trench was crushed or pulverized shinobi looking like nothing from what they used to be, but only that of a bloody sacks of flesh on death's door. Kushina and Kyuubi looked at the sight of power in total awe, or mostly to Kyuubi's shock. Breathing out, Naruto glared among the last of the forces that survived his attack. He couldn't do that again or risk him actually sinking the island itself. Hell, right now, he had a hard time keeping that attack under control. So when he gazed upon the last remnants of the two brigades, he counted the numbers to be past 500. Monster. He's a monster, murmured a terrified Iwa shinobi. He had just seen his allies all ready to take down Iwa and Kumo's most hated enemy and bring glory to their village. Only in that second the man let loose one punch and all of his allies, those thousands upon thousands of his allies, were all destroyed or blown away. In that one moment he looked at Naruto's body with eyes that were now filled with terror. Even their Anbu commander was completely decimated from the attack, and it was rumored they were as strong as their cages. What was to say this being before him didn't just have the power to swat cages like children? For after seeing this, reality was just shattered from him. He looked around to see a few of both forces survived and gathering up for an attack. Despite the overwhelming fear and his instincts yelling at him to run away, he gathered with them, thinking they just caught them off guard. Yet, even in the deepest reaches of his soul, he knew that they weren't gonna survive. Seeing them all gather up made Naruto scowl even more in irritation. Gripping his fist, he did a few hand seals before he heard the collective shouts from the shinobi before him. Doden. Doryuden. Earth Release. Earth Dragon Bullet was the shout of 200 of Iowa shinobi. Raiden. Raryuden. Lightning Release. Lightning Dragon was the shout of 250 Kumo shinobi. Kushina watched an incoming army of elemental dragons coming toward her with horror. She wasn't used to something like, and it was overwhelming her every second. Naruto somehow felt what she was feeling and spoke. "Don't worry, Kushi-chan. I promised your father I would protect you, and I will with my dying breath," he said, not caring if the dragons were but 5 feet away from him. He looked over his shoulder and spoke with a small smile. "Besides, I gotta protect my fiancé, shouldn't I?" he said teasingly, and before she could even retort, Naruto swiftly brought his left hand up, and with but a swing, a blade of concentrated futon chakra came out, being the width of 50 feet. It clashed against the dragon, then a sudden explosion erupted, making the ground shake and smoke go into the air, making a small mushroom cloud hang over the small battlefield. That's when his senses kicked in. Surprising Kushina, Naruto spun around quickly, only to receive a slash across his chest from a katana-wielding Iwa nin. Letting out a small grunt, Naruto took a step back and looked down to see a gash from the katana, showing it was charged with futon chakra, making it hurt all the more. Ignoring the bleeding, Naruto focused his murderous gaze upon the smug-looking Iwa nin. "Ha! I injured the so-called nightmare of Iwa. This guy is pathetic," he said arrogantly, while his comrades were letting out small smug smiles as well, knowing they were catching the man off guard now and knew the man's weakness. It was the little girl on his back. Though the man that injured Naruto didn't know how bad he fucked up. Kushina looked at Naruto's wound with horror-filled eyes. The wound showed the blood practically pouring out of him. She clenched her eyes closed, knowing it was her fault Naruto was hurt. She was just being a weakness right now. Naruto felt Kushina's distress and frowned. "She's crying. Does she think it's her fault?" Glaring, Naruto raising his hand and grasped the shinobi by the head, and to the shock of many lifted the squirming man into the air, his feet dangling helplessly in the air. Kushina watched with terror-filled eyes as Naruto grit his teeth in anger, before clenching his fist tight, making the squirming shinobi scream loud. "Ah! Let go of me!" he yelled, feeling the unbearable pressure of his skull being physically caved in, squishing his brain and cracking his skull. Naruto ignored him and spoke, his voice echoing all across the battlefield. "You bastards made the wrong move. In attacking my home just for the sake of finding me. You wanted a war, you'll get a war," he said, making many weak-willed suddenly pass out, scaring the shit out of few other shinobi. Especially the look in Naruto's eyes showed he wouldn't spare anyone. "Kushina, close your eyes, don't peek. Kyuubi, turn off her hearing, she doesn't need to hear this," he said, knowing Kyuubi was seeing this and knew Naruto was right. Kushina would be petrified at what was about to happen. With that, Kushina closed her eyes tightly while Kyuubi turned off the hearing of her container, but did keep a mental window of the soon-to-be battle. I wanna see how much blood you will spill for your loved ones. Show me, Naru-kun, show me you're worthy. With Naruto turned his icy blue eyes upon the numerous shinobi and roared. Now you bastards will pay, all of you. With Naruto crushed the skull of the Iwa nin, showering him in blood and gore as brain matter splashed his face. The rest of the Iwa nin's dead body fell onto the ground, but it was suddenly sent rocketing by a kick from Naruto, sending it crashing into a Kumo nin, which quickly killed the Kumo shinobi due to the velocity the body hit him at, which shattered his spine completely. This scared many of the shinobi. Seeing such a display appear before them, it made many retch at such a sight, while others tried to keep control of their bladders. That's when they felt the deadly presence overcome them all. So looking at Naruto's form, they all saw him glaring at them all with his stone-cold murderous sapphire eyes with the flecks of golden amber glowing brightly. This scared them even more. It got worse when a ghostly figure appeared over Naruto, with it showing to be the apparition of a demonic-looking figure holding a scythe in its hand. Your price for angering me is death. With that, the slaughter began. Watching this slaughter was none other than the Raikage and Tsuchikage. Both had witnessed the battle from start, and now they both were now standing shocked still as they saw all their shinobi practically ripped, torn, shredded and outright dismembered. They watched as their most hated enemy slaughtered every single shinobi before him. They watched as the man no monster get cut up, slashed by katanas, stabbed by kunais or hit by dodenjutsus. The man just brushed them off, ignoring his massive injuries, and kept his pace of killing them all with their blood showering the ground and himself. I think I just shit myself, murmured the Raikage, which was indeed true, for the brown stain in his pants and the foul odor coming from him. Onoki felt the same way, since the man was on the ground back away at what he was seeing. In just a year, that monster grew strong enough to wipe out his best shinobi like they were children. Right now, Onoki truly felt the meaning of fear. I think it's best we retreat and head back to continue our attack upon Uzu no Kuni. We might not be able to kill him, but at least we can kill and destroy his clan. Onoki said, determined to at least wound his most hated enemy by destroying his home. With that, the two cages left with their prides shattered and their fears for the man raised up to new heights. Kyuubi right now having a hard time from holding back a moan of pleasure as she saw her container's mate practically slaughter all the shinobi before him like pigs. The blood and gore coated him like a blanket. It drenched him, but it suited him quite nicely in her opinion. The way he tore some of them apart was breathtaking to her. The way he killed them, the way he showed no mercy as he crushed a pleading shinobi by the head with his boot or rammed his entire fist through one man's head. It was glorious. She knew now without a doubt, Naruto was worthy no scratch, that he was probably the only being alive that could subdue her if he was to go berserk like he's done. Though when he looked up her container, her eyes softened. The little girl was shaking like a leaf from all the sudden movements Naruto made. It was a good thing she covered Kushina in her chakra cloak, or she too would have coated in the blood. That would have scarred the little girl for life. Though when she looked at Naruto's bloody form, his wounds only making him all the more wanting from her. She felt a shiver of excitement go down her spine. She idly wondered if Naruto was part of some demon for him to fight like he did. Naru-kun. I cannot wait our meeting, for it is sure to be exciting. Naruto, on the outside, exhaled as the bloodlust look in his eyes disappeared. He looked around himself to see the multiple bodies of his enemies strewn about, dead in the most painful ways possible, or some close to dying, just slowly bleeding to death. He looked at himself and grimaced. Kushina would have a fit if she saw him like this, and the opponent's injuries wouldn't help either. So with a quick jump, Naruto jumped into the air and into the forest while using a small sweetened jutsu to wash off the gore and blood on his body. After the quick clean-up, he made sure the smell of blood was off of him and his belongings before looking over his shoulder to see the chakra-cloaked form of Kushina still with her eyes closed and here silenced. Though when he saw her shaking like a leaf form, he grimaced before speaking. All right, Kyuubi, bring the hearing back into her ears. We're safe for the moment. and Kyuubi did as told. The hearing came back to Kushina. So when she heard no fighting, only the sounds of crickets and the sound of water, she snapped open her eyes to see that she was now in a forest. Looking around, she saw that she was still holding onto Naruto, and that's also when she saw the worried blue orbs of Naruto staring at her. "You okay, Kushi-chan?" he said, only for her to give her immediate response. "Naruto-kun, you're okay," she said, not seeing his injuries even now since they were covered up a bit by Naruto, since she didn't want her to worry. The redhead glomped him as best as she could, her little arms small compared to Naruto's form. Sensing this, he let her hug him tightly as she rubbed her cheek against his. "As much as I love you hugging me like this, we gotta get moving, Kushi-chan, unless you wanna stay like this," he said teasingly, making the redhead blush in embarrassment. "Sorry, but let's go," she proclaimed. Chuckling, Naruto nodded. "Very well then, just hold on tight," and she did. To her eagerness, she gripped Naruto's head tightly. Naruto charged chakra into his legs, adding it with his physical strength. He jumped over the sea itself. Seeing the incoming land after crossing the sea at such fast speeds, Naruto prepped for landing. He gripped the laughing Kushina firmly as the landing quickly came into sight. Boom! With small explosion, Naruto landed right in the middle of another forest, but he was familiar with. They were the forests of Nami no Kuni. He looked to see Kushina grinning widely with her big violet orbs glittering with excitement. "WOWE, that was fun, LTS, do that again, DATTEBANE," she exclaimed, pumping her fist into the air. Naruto just chuckled at her enthusiasm at what he just did, only she would want to do something like that again and or find it fun. While others just found it terrifying or destroyed all logic of what they knew to be impossible. That's when his mission came to mind and the cold hard realization came down upon Naruto. Turning around slightly, Naruto saw the smoking form of Uzu no Kuni and let a small tear go down his face. "I'll protect her forever, Iro-sama. Not just by your order, but since Kushina is my most precious person," he mentally thought as he gazed at the excited chatterbox that was his best friend girlfriend. Patting her on the head gently, he gave her a small kiss on the cheek, earning a small blush from her, and spoke, "Let's go, Kushi-chan, we're burning night time and I promise to have you away from these borders soon." With a slow nod from the blushing girl, Naruto ran at fast speeds most couldn't catch past the forests and deeper into territory of other countries. One day later, High no Kuni borders. It's been a day since the two have traveled. First, after leaving Uzu no Kuni, they passed Nami no Kuni and crossed the borders of Kaminari no Kuni. Now they were passing through High no Kuni borders, the very country not only he, but Kushina hated with a passion. It wasn't the country they hated though, it was Konoha that nested within the country. She'd started to hate them early on in her studies of being a shinobi. As the day of traveling passed, night time had fallen and Kushina was starting to notice Naruto's tried form. He was sweating a lot and his clothes were starting to get more wet. From what she didn't know, and that worried her. Laying down a small tent, Naruto was laying down in his futon trying to block out the pain from his wounds. He hadn't had the time to heal yet. That's when he heard the entrance to his tent flap open slightly, so when he looked up slightly he saw the worried face of Kushina. "Naruto-kun, can I sleep with you? I'm scared," she said, not seeing his state of weakness. Naruto, seeing her state, fought down his one and ushered her in. She followed in and snuggled into him as he wrapped them both in a blanket. He felt her snuggle closer into his chest, while her long maroon hair covered her small frame compared to his own. He shakily wrapped her up in a hug which she quickly embraced while letting out a sigh of contempt. Now, despite his numerous injuries, he let out a small smile before kissing Kushina on the forehead before pulling her closer into him. "I love you always, Kushi-hime, forever and beyond, even in death." Though what he didn't see was the small yet happy smile slowly appear on Kushina's face before she snuggled her face into his chest while the happy tears flooded out of her eyes. "He loves me. He loves me. He loves me," she repeated in her mind, finalizing those words forever in her mind as well as them both in each other's embrace. That's when their moment was suddenly destroyed when Naruto's senses went haywire. Biting back the pain, Naruto grabbed Kushina and jumped out of the tent just in time from a hail of kunai to stab through the tent and into the pillow of where Naruto's head used to be. Naruto's sense of alert and danger was going out of control, but as he hid Kushina behind him he looked around to see the moving shadows of what he already knew was shinobi. Yet he couldn't tell who they were. That is until he heard a voice. A voice he knew all too well. Kukuku, seems we meet again Naruto, a snake-like voice echoed from the forests. Snapping his attention to the voice, Naruto hid Kushina behind him protectively and spoke, if you're here, then that means. That's right, Gaki, said a voice similar to that of male but, also to that of Lecher. It's been a long time since we've seen each other brat, a female voice followed with a hint of bitterness in her tone. Gritting his teeth in anger, I see, so he's sent you three after me. The old buzzard probably knew of the attack and saw that as a chance to take me out. Naruto said, confusing Kushina while some of the shadows in the forest tensed. Don't you dare insult sensei. The Lecher-like voice yelled, making Naruto just grin. Why not just come out already, or are you three and your little friends too scared? Is that it, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Orochimaru? He said, speaking their three names, making Kushina's eyes go wide in recognition. Hehe, it seems you haven't lost your touch with your sensing abilities, Naruto. Orochimaru said, coming out of the shadows with a smile that just defined that of a snake ready to get its prey. Orochimaru was a pale man, pale as death, and had snake-like yellow slitted eyes. His long black hair went past his shoulder blades. He wore a black long-sleeved shirt with a green Junin vest symbolizing him for Konoha. Around his left bicep was a Konoha headband. He wore black shinobi pants ending at the calf. His calves were wrapped in medical tape. Lastly was his black shinobi sandals and his pouch on his right leg. I agree, but then again this Gaki isn't normal. Jiraiya said with a firm look in his eyes as they gazed at the one person Konoha hated more than Iwa and Kumo combined. The man had long white spiky hair with two red line marks going down his face. He had black eyes and tan skin. He wore the same thing Orochimaru was, except his long-sleeved shirt was blue and so were his pants. He had a pouch on his left leg. Meh, still can't believe this brat is the same one that has sensei all worked up. Tsunade said with a hint of disbelief in her voice. The woman was dressed the exact same way as Jiraiya, only her long pale blonde hair passed her shoulders while they were both tied in two ponytails. Her brown eyes glittered with anger yet irritation. She also had fair skin that which shone greatly in night. These three were the students of Hiruzen Sarutobi, shinobi of Konoha, the Densetsu no Sannin, legendary three ninja, newly named by Hanzo the Salamander himself. They all had many differences, but one thing they all shared was one thing. And that was their rivalry with Naruto himself. It was a secret that no one knew, but that Naruto during the war was able to beat them all three into submission, and ever since they have always trained to just take out Naruto before word was ever spread them three were taken out. By a child no less. Bring out your little friends you three, for I am in no mood for games. Naruto said with a look in his eyes that could scare an army of cages. Jiraiya flinched a bit from the look in Naruto's eyes, as did Tsunade. Orochimaru hid it very well, but he too was unnerved a bit by those eyes. Very well then Gaki, it's your funeral. Jiraiya said, snapping his fingers, with the whole forest was swarmed with shinobi. Looking around himself, Naruto saw that the many shinobi he saw were all of Konoha's very own, with some being their Anbu. Growling, he looked down at Kushina briefly to see her shaking form and spoke. What do you want with me? He spoke so quietly that those with even trained senses would need to strain their ears greatly to hear his words, but they heard him, which Orochimaru just smiled sinisterly. Raising his finger, the pale man spoke for his teammates and pointed at Kushina's quivering form. We are here for her, Naruto-kun, he said, making Naruto's eyes go wide while Kushina looked on terrified at what she just heard. Clenching his fist, Naruto spoke gravely, and what, pray tell, do you want with her? he said, gritting his teeth while randomly letting out a spike of killer intent, making a few shinobi tense. Orochimaru just grinned darkly and said, "Why, for one, she's the last of her clan and also the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. So sensei took this as his chance to get her since it was such a great time, but we never calculated for you to be with her," he said sarcastically at the end. Naruto's eyes gained a dangerous look to them, adding already to his fearful eyes. He clenched his fist so hard he drew blood and his knuckles popped. Looking down at Kushina, he saw her terrified violet eyes, and then he flinched when he felt his wounds acting up. That's also when he felt the disturbance in his chakra. His eyes mentally widened when he felt the gravity seals acting up. Damn, not now. Gritting his teeth, Naruto crouched down and spoke, "Kushihime, get on my back, and whatever you do, don't let go," he said while she just nodded, fearful of what was to come. Getting onto his back once more, Naruto started to slowly release his remaining chakra and spoke in such a voice that it made many lose control of their bladders, or in the Sennin's case take a few steps back. "You want her? You're gonna have to go through me," he said, and with that Naruto charged at the Sennin, the shinobi of Konoha falling behind him, charging at his back. The Sennin prepared themselves as the speeding rocket of Naruto's form coming at them with murder in his eyes. With that, the battle of not only survival began, but also the battle to protect what was precious to Naruto began. 1 hour later, the Great Ravine. The forests of Hai no Kuni, the once tall trees that stood against all, were now devastated or outright destroyed. It had only been an hour since the battle between Naruto and Konoha's strike force of Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru and their shinobi. And he was faring pretty well. That is until actually saw the many numbers Sarutobi sent after him. It was well over twice the size of both Iwa and Kumo's forces he fought early combined. It didn't help much that he was also fighting the Sennin as well, and in his weakened state it only made it all the harder for him. At their Great Ravine, the historical land that was where the Shadaime faced off against one of the Biju in the early years, was the battered and bleeding forms of the three Sennin. All three of them were greatly wounded from their battle with the wounded yet titanic Naruto. Their forces were, but destroyed or out of commission from Naruto's attacks. They only had a handful of shinobi left, and even then that was a small number compared to how many Naruto has killed. The Z-ranked shinobi himself wasn't looking good either. His wounds from fighting Iwa and Kumo were now fully opened back up, added with the freshly made wounds from his fight with Konoha's forces. His form had multiple burns, cuts, slashes and gashes of all kinds. His clothes were ruined by getting hit by dozens of Kaden jutsus. His back was riddled with Senbon, kunai and shuriken with the occasional katana or two. His face had blood going down over his eyes and blood coming out of his mouth, but his eyes were the most terrifying thing of all. They had the look of pure defiance even with his mortal injuries. His icy blue sapphire eyes glared darkly at the remaining Konoha forces and the three injured Sennin. His eyes showed even in his weakened state he wouldn't go down without a fight. Right now he was on the ground, knee first, with a worried to death Kushina crying seeing his bloody form. She climbed off only to see a Konoha nin take that as a chance to get her. Too bad for him that Naruto was still fighting, and with a quick turn, Naruto grabbed the shinobi by the neck and slammed him right into the ground, creating a small crater with the pulverized shinobi clearly dead. "Kami, this kid is a monster," Jiraiya said, holding his bleeding chest in pain. He got a nod from both his teammates. Even with the kid weakened, he was still a god among fighting, and his will to not die was amazing to say the least. "I agree, but even he is reaching his limit," Orochimaru stated with blood coming out of his mouth. Tsunade only nodded, too exhausted to speak and concentrating to heal the wounds she has and the low level of chakra she has right now. "One more strike and take the little girl and push him of the cliff, that should finish this," Orochimaru said, with his teammates agreeing fully. "With Naruto we could find him at the edge of the ravine with Kushina in front of him trying to everything she could to heal him. Only to fail with his bleeding, blocking out her limited knowledge of healing." Tearing up, Kushina looked up to see the coughing up blood of her best friend, but right now he was just smiling warmly at her. Despite her failures of trying to heal him, he was grateful for her to try. Kushi-chan, come here, he said, which she did, slowly walking into his awaiting arms and hugged his bleeding body with tears flowing freely down her face. Naruto wrapped his right arm around her small frame and spoke even as the light in his eyes was dimming. He could feel the life in him dimming no matter how much he wanted to deny it. He was gonna die here, and to lose Kushina to Konoha was tearing him apart. But damn it, he would keep fighting. He would fight for just a miracle to happen. So he can help Kushina. Kushi-chan, look at me, he uttered, which she did ever so slowly despite the now incoming 3 Sennin and the forces of Konoha charging at Naruto's down form. Looking down, Naruto saw her violet-red puffy eyes looking at him with worry for him, which filled his heart with warmth. Placing a shaky hand on her cheek, he looked her in the eyes and spoke. Kushi-chan, never forget. I love you with all my heart, soul and my being. Even if we are separated, I'll come for you. Just remember, and never forget. I love you, Uzumaki Kushina. With that, Naruto gave one more kiss to Kushina, kissing her on the lips, shocking her greatly, since this wasn't just an accidental kiss but his intentional kiss. She felt all the love he had for her, the passion he had for her that has been with him for years since he's been with her. It brought tears to her eyes before she leaned into the kiss with him, enjoying his lips with hers. Naruto opened his eyes slightly, letting a small tear fall. Seeing the charging forces of Konoha, he could already feel his gravity seals acting abnormally, telling him they were about to explode, and he didn't know what would happen. And he would rather die than have Kushina killed by his own hands from the seals upon his body. Seeing the incoming shinobi, he separated from Kushina, slightly breaking the kiss, closed his eyes and let his last few words come out of his mouth. I will see you again, Kushina-chan. Don't forget me, is all I ask of you. And with that, Naruto closed his eyes, leaning his forehead against Kushina's own, sealing his words with a last gentle kiss to her lips. Naruto and Kushina were separated from each other as Tsunade grabbed Kushina and knocked her out from when she tried to struggle from her grasp. While her other 2 teammates along with the rest of Konoha's shinobi all struck at once where Naruto's bleeding body was. But the last few words he spoke before the explosion happened scared them all till their very souls trembled in absolute fear. The look in Naruto's just told them. They royally just screwed the fuck up. You Konoha bastards might have won this day, but rest assured. I'll be back, and next time, he said as the ninjutsu and explosive noted kunai all struck where he was. I'll kill all of you. He yelled as all the attacks collided with each other. Boom. In a fiery blaze of destruction, the end of the cliff exploded in a red giant fireball of Kaden Jutsu and explosive kunais. The cliff totally destroyed. The Konoha nin all looked to see the once most hated enemy of Iwa, Kumo, and Konoha's body gone. His body must have been vaporized from such a combined attack. Orochimaru theorized as Jiraiya walked over to Tsunade with Kushina's unconscious form on the ground, with he himself having a grim look on his face. To think, even in his weakened state, that guy did all that damage to us to just protect this girl, he said, looking at Kushina's form with curiosity. I know, he fought like he was a man possessed. It was actually pretty scary when you think about if he were to ever have grown stronger. Tsunade said with a grim yet shaken look in her eyes. Jiraiya nodded. That was true. It was a good thing they had Naruto at his weakest, since he was not only still injured after fighting Iwa and Kumo, but also he took the hits aimed for Kushina made him weaker. He would admit it though, if they hadn't used those kind of tricks he had no doubt they would have all died, no questions asked. Still, it brought a shiver of fear up his spine when he saw that last look in Naruto's eyes and his parting words before the explosion. Looking at Kushina, he narrowed his eyes and brought out a bottle of ink and a brush, which Tsunade quickly knew what he was gonna do. It's time to finish the last part of the mission. Tsunade place her on her stomach. Once she did, Jiraiya did a few strokes quickly on the girl's neck, showing a strange seal. Next he did a few hand seals and spoke. Fuinjutsu. Memoriroku. Fuin. Fuinjutsu. Memory lock. seal, with that the seal glowed a bright blue before disappearing along with the seal. With a nod of seeing the seal not visible, Jiraiya picked up Kushina's body and started walking back to Konoha, his teammates in tow along with their forces. Just that, Jiraiya never knew that the seal he placed on Kushina, he made a mistake on, which will cause him dearly in the future. Kyuubi within her container screamed in outrage as the seal placed upon her container did its work in locking up her memories of Naruto and her family. It was getting closer to her as well, and with her power sealed away she couldn't do much to stop it. I swear to Kami, Kushi-chan. Naru-kun will be back and will save us. I only hope it's soon. With the memory of Naruto vanished completely from Kyuubi as well, locked away by the seal Jiraiya placed upon Kushina. Konoha made a mistake though on that day, for kidnapping the very person Naruto loved the most has started a chain reaction that would change the world forever. Inside the ravine ground, on the ground of the deep ravine of Hi-no-Kuni, was a large crater with rubble of rock around the crater. Inside the crater though was the bloody form of Naruto. Only this time he was covered head to toe in glowing seals. His blonde hair was matted down with blood and his face was pale. His body started to glow rapidly with the seals in the color of a deep yellow with a tint of black. Once the first seal cracked, it started a chain reaction of the others following and, with a last pulse of chakra. Boom! An explosion of chakra along with yellow-blackish energy erupted in the ravine as the energy of the release was about to reach past the ravine and alert many. It stopped suddenly and quickly followed right back, converging right into Naruto's yellow glowing body. His whole form was seeable, but his appearance was unseen by any. Though that quickly changed when the yellow energy gradually started to fuse into his body. As it did so, it revealed a different Naruto. The once tan skin he had was now a porcelain that glowed brightly in the dark ravine. His height from his original 5 feet 5 was not a whopping 6 feet 4. His whole body was twice the size it was before and his muscles were 3 times the size they were before. His face was now a lot more angular and masculine. Some would think this man was in his early 20s. His hair was still golden blonde with a few black highlights within, with his hair being longer than it was before and much more tamed, but spikes still jutted out. That's when the slight twitch of movement from his hand signified Naruto was alive. When his eyes opened up slightly, it showed the color of something that would strike fear into many. His eyes were the color of a golden amber with a much more gold tint to it, and his pupils having a slit pupils of a predator. Silently looking over his body, the now giant of a teen spoke. Now, this isn't what I expected, he said before balling up his fist and slamming it against the ravine wall. Surprisingly, a feel of some kind of energy flowed through his attack, made the wall fall completely apart. Thus, made the newly changed Naruto blink in surprise before a grin came upon his face. Don't worry Kushi-chan, soon. I'll come back for you, and this time, we'll be together and nothing shall separate us again. He yelled as an unnatural wind blew out from him, pulverizing the spiked and jagged walls of the great ravine. The ground itself trembled beneath his feet while the animals of the forest near the ravine all ran fearfully from the terrifying power coming from the ravine. Be warned Konoha, your time is coming, said a flaming Naruto as yellow-blackish flames flamed from him. Deep within the ravine, Naruto looked himself over and saw the tremendous changes that overgone his body. He flexed his arm outward and back. He looked to see his stature was now much bigger than it was before, taller than he expected to be. Looking at his hair, he saw the black highlights in them making him quirk an eyebrow, but he did feel the hair, it felt more like a lion's mane. That's when he felt the immense power flowing through and around him. It was like a maelstrom of power flowing in him, ready to burst out at any moment. Looking at the obliterated wall made him think. Well, this is an unexpected change, but that's not important right now. First off, Konoha took Kushina-chan, that's one reason to destroy them all, but the way I am right now, one mistake could kill and destroy so many. That's when he pulled out a locket Iroh gave him before he escaped with Kushina. He knew it all too well. Flipping it open, he smiled warmly, seeing himself with Kushina in a picture on the right side, smiling with her in his arms. Stroking the picture gently, Naruto frowned. I've got to train these powers and master them, cause if I don't, who knows what would happen if I made the slightest mistake. But what of Kushina? No, they won't hurt her. She's too precious to them. Bastards will get theirs. He closed the locket, not looking at the other picture, for it was for Kushina's eyes only. Besides, he knew what was on the other side. Looking around himself, he saw most of his belongings either trashed by the fall or destroyed by the explosion. Looking into his vest, he saw the scroll Iroh gave him along with the one he sealed up, his and Kushina's own books and scrolls. Placing them back inside the vest pocket, Naruto looked up to see the night sky. He wondered how long he had been down here, but shook his head, not really caring, only to get his powers mastered and get Kushina back. Time to start training. The sooner I have them mastered, the sooner I can get Kushi-chan back. With that, Naruto started unsealing many camping supplies, marking the once site where he was supposedly killed, his new home for the next few years. Konoha would never know that their number one enemy was still alive and practically under their noses. Konohagakure Hokage office. It's been 3 days since Sarutobi sent out his students along with most of his forces to secure Uzumaki Kushina and to kill Uzumaki D. Naruto. Since then, Hiruzen has been very jumpy lately. He believed truly he did his students killed Naruto, the very man that scared even him. But, even still, he had a feeling that something was wrong, something out of place. Looking over at his couch, he saw the still unconscious form of Uzumaki Kushina, last remaining Uzumaki and container of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. He heard of how the Z-ranked shinobi fought to protect Kushina. The reports all shocked him to his very core. The man fought like he was possessed, nothing could take him down. Jutsu, weapons, taijutsu, genjutsu, nothing. Even Jiraiya summoned thingamabob did nothing, if only angered Naruto further. He was speechless when Jiraiya told him of how he practically manhandled Gamabunta. He heard of how he took Gamabunta's own weapon and swung it back, making a scar over the giant toad's left eye. He looked over at Kushina and spoke so quietly. Why would that man fight so hard to protect you? I wonder, was it something concerning you, or was it out of his own personal feelings? He mused, outwardly wanting, no needing to know why a man of such power and fame would protect someone like her. Was it that he was an Uzumaki as well? Was that he was sent to protect her? It frustrated him greatly of why the man fought to protect her so greatly. Shaking his head, he looked back to his desk to read the reports from his spies all across the elemental nations. It was all reported that Konoha was the one to finally kill the legendary man himself. They had sent out a force bigger and stronger than both Iwa and Kumo's combined to kill the man. Well, that was what they told the public, but in reality it was a mission to capture Kushina. True, Konoha suddenly got many enemies from the countries that saw the man as a hero but weren't brave enough to start a fight with them. But they did receive the title, strongest shinobi village in the whole elemental nations, since they were the ones to kill a man capable of beating a Biju. Yes, they used underhanded tactics, but he's dead and gone, never to bother them and scare him again. Right. As Hiruzen was looking at the reports in thought, he never saw the glowing of Jiraiya's seal upon Kushina's neck crack halfway through before disappearing once more. 10 years later. It has been 10 years since the death of Uzumaki D. Naruto, number one most hated shinobi of Iwa, Kumo and Konoha. Ever since then, Konoha took pride in its title of being the strongest and proved it time and time again in the war. Ever since Naruto's death, it put quite a halt on the war all around, since it was such shock to many. Though over the years Konoha has let their fame go to their heads and made many arrogant, thinking they were invincible after killing a god-like being those years ago. With only a select few within knowing how false all that was, knowing the man could have easily destroyed them. But a few things has happened after all these years. Strange events have been popping up with a few countries, including Aim and Kiri. The rumored complete and utter defeat of Hanzo the Salamander, and the civil war starting all over again, this time with a new Kage following in the few steps of his predecessor. Strangely enough though, Kumo's hatred over Naruto began to dwindle over time since his death. It would seem Naruto finally gained a very high respect of the Raikage after his accomplishments against Konoha. Despite being mortal enemies, the Raikage held a great respect for the man for the things he done against Konoha. The ravine itself, the place where Naruto was killed, was soon upon by many votes by many countries and feudal lords that were great friends to Naruto marked it as his tombstone, for being the only true place a being like Naruto should be buried. What better place to honor a man that beat a Biju than to mark the place of his death, than the great scar made from a Biju's attack? But with one appearance, will shock the very nations themselves. Forest of High no Kuni road to Konohagakure. Walking on the dirt road to Konohagakure, was a cloaked man. He stood at any normal human height of 5 feet 8 or so. The cloak covered up the whole of the man's body. The way the man moved though told a different story from him looking totally normal in height. He moved like a fighter, a experienced soldier ready for the quickest ambush of any kind. This would unnerve many people, but it's usually common in the land of shinobi, so some just pass it off being it normal. The thing was though that this man wasn't normal by any means. Raising his head a bit, you could see the blackness of the cloak shadowing the man's face, but that's when his eyes. The eyes would make any person, whether they be civilian, shinobi, kage or even Biju, feel like nothing but an ant facing a giant tsunami. The overwhelming look in the man's golden amber slitted eyes just told you he wasn't normal. It practically screamed danger and would make any lesser man die of pure fear. With each step he took, the wind would blow past him, ruffling his cloak and making the trees rustle in the wind. Each time his eyes looked at the closing distance of Konoha, a great black hot hate would glow brightly in his eyes, making even the skies themselves part way. Each time his body seemed to pulsate in a strange wind, the ground would gradually crack or the trees themselves would start to uproot. I'm coming, Kushi-chan, and soon we'll be together again, and this time I won't fail you, Iroh, or anyone else ever again. Konoha was about to be rocked to its very core by this man's appearance alone. Konoha main gates. Standing at the gates were 2 chunin on guard duty, the #1 most hated job for any shinobi. It was the most boring thing any shinobi had to do. These 2 chunin were no exception, except for the fact this time their guard duty was about to get interesting. The wind suddenly blew past them as they saw a black cloaked figure coming in sight of them. They both felt a little tense seeing the strange cloaked figure. After all, a war was going on, so they were suspicious of what was around them. When the cloaked man was right in front of them though, they felt relieved to see it looked to be a normal person. That cost them greatly, since you don't judge a book by its cover. The man raised his head at them and flashed his eyes at them, and with a sudden pulse of wind they both flinched before falling back, passed out. Eyes rolled to the back of their heads and foam coming out of their mouths. Looking down at the chunin, the man shook his head in disapproval. Pathetic was the only word the man said before he entered the village, masking his signature from the patrolling shinobi and barrier watchers. As the man came into Konoha, his eyes quickly surveyed all of the things in front of him, memorizing them perfectly. He saw all the civilians, the patrolling shinobi and the children all playing around like nothing was happening on the outside of these walls. The blissful smiles on their faces and carefree attitudes showed around him. The fools, arrogant in their belief they're invincible, and all because of a simple lie. Distaste and anger was full in his mouth. That's when he saw the Uzu no Kuni symbols upon their backs. The hatred in his eyes rose to monumental heights for that. That's when the man closed his eyes, reaching with his chakra sensory, trying to find the one person he came for. The slight widening of his eyes was the only reaction that was seen, but also the burning anger that flashed in his eyes also showed before his form just disappeared in nothing but a simple gust of wind. Appearing over in the trees above, the man's cloaked form was looking down at what seemed like a training ground sorts. But what he was looking at was what was important, for it was a total of 8 people in general, with 2 of them being Junin shinobi. He recognized the 2 Junin shinobi as Jiraiya of the Sennin and the other as Tsukumo Hatake. Looking at the others was a bunch of teenagers he didn't really care about right now. All he cared about right now was the two people in the middle of the training ground sparring. The first one was something that made him shocked a bit but shook it off. It was a teenager that had golden spiky hair with two large bangs coming down the sides of his face and his eyes were that of azure blue. He had a chunin vest on and blue shinobi pants and a blue long-sleeved shinobi shirt with the vest over it. He finished of the look with blue shinobi sandals and a kunai pouch on his left thigh. The other person though was his greatest concern, for who he was looking at was losing pretty badly in the spar. It was a woman that by all means defined perfection. She had the height of 5 feet 8 with long silky maroon hair. Her face was perfectly heart-shaped with the greatest shade of violet anyone would ever see in her eyes. She had a perfect slender petite body with a bust showing at least small D cup. She was wearing the normal Konoha attire. As he watched her, he saw the dark marking upon the back of her neck which was invisible to many but, to him it was as clear as day. Thus it made him grit his teeth in anger knowing what that kind of seal was but, he did see the damage as was in it was halfway through breaking already. This made him smile since he knew that the only person to have put that seal on the woman was none other than Jiraiya and what a lousy job he did. You've grown so beautiful Kushina, and strong too, but that seal hinders all the power you had back then, and knowledge and memories of me as well. A female shout interrupted his musings. Looking down his eyes flashed brightly when he saw the blonde man teen doing hand seals toward a downed and exhausted form of Kushina. Recognizing the hand seals and looking to see Jiraiya letting it happen made him step into action. I don't want to do this but, on sensei's orders she must be held down and by pain if necessary. Jiraiya though watching what his student was about to do. He saw Sakumo about to jump in only to give him a glare saying, no. That's when he saw the speed black blur pop out of the forest right when Minato shouted out his jutsu. Raiden. Toru no Hanma. Lightning release. Thor's hammer, he said before a massive lightning-shaped hammer shot out of the sky and directly as Kushina. It wasn't lethal but, it would assuredly would injure her greatly. Too bad since the black blur Jiraiya suddenly appeared in front of Kushina terrified form with his back facing her. When they all saw this they tried to stop the oncoming jutsu but, it would seem Minato put a tad too much chakra in that attack. Kushina herself watched this cloaked man appear in front of her about to take the hit that was meant for her. That was until she heard the man's voice. Don't worry Kushina-chan, I won't let you get hurt anymore, was the words she heard him speak. It confused her but. That's when she felt she knew this voice before, as the lighting hammer came at them she held her head in pain. Flashback. Come on Kushina-chan, you're stronger than this I know it. You can do it Kushina-chan, you're strong I believe in you. You've gotten stronger Kushi-chan, soon you'll catch up to me. I love you. Kushi-chan. Never forget. I'll always love you. Kushi-hime. Never forget me. The same voice resounded this time showing just who this person was. It was a male that looked almost exactly like Minato only this person looked much more friendly than that Hokage crazed Namikaze. His blue-flecked golden slit eyes stared upon her with love something she hasn't felt before. That is until he spoke once more. Kushi-hime, do you remember the promise we made to each other when we were just kids? That's when she saw to her shock she saw her younger 8-year-old self appear in front of her. She saw her grin widely before speaking. Of course I do. We promised we would get married when we were older and I always keep my promises Databane. Her younger self shouted before seeing the man himself smile and opened up his arms confused at the action she watched surprised when her younger self ran and jumped into his arms kissing his cheek. She for some reason felt a blush come upon her face. When she took in the whole man's body he looked so handsome, she could see his body was restrained by the clothing he wore and, his muscled and chiseled body was stretching the fabric of his clothing. That's when she felt someone looking at her so looking up she to her shock saw her younger self and the blonde Adonis looking at her with amused eyes. It's time you awoke Kushina, please awaken and remember, the blonde man started with her younger self taking over. Who you truly are and, remember the person we both loved all those years ago is by your side now. And with a final look from the two, they both spoke in unison. Awaken Kushina. Flashback end. The seal on the back of Kushina's neck glowed rapidly while cracking even more before it shattered. Kushina suddenly saw so many things, remembered the places she's been, who she truly was, who her father was, everything. The final memory was of her and Naruto kissing before she was separated from him by Tsunade. Within her mindscape, when the seal shattered, the once bloodlust Biju Kyuubi was now blinking in confusion at the sudden rush of memories as well. When they finally passed, its giant red crimson eyes widened with realization. Then its giant nine-tailed form glowed brightly before shrinking down to a more humanoid figure. When the glow dimmed, it showed a beautiful woman that tied with Kushina herself. She had the body of a goddess. Her perfect hourglass figure would make any straight man or gay die of a nosebleed. Her D-cup busy was out in full view, barely with much hidden by her royal blood-red kimono, though it showed much of her cleavage. She had long silky smooth red hair, it being a bit more lighter than Kushina's. Her face was carved from perfection and her eyes were that of a crimson red with a fox slit within. Smirking, showing her abnormally large fangs, the goddess-like woman spoke. I knew Naru-kun would come back, and from what I'm sensing from him, he's gotten a lot more powerful than he was 10 years ago. On the outside world, Kushina rapidly blinked her eyes, adjusting her head with the now revealed memories until she remembered the situation she was in. Looking up, her eyes widened at seeing the Raiden Jutsu just a foot away from the cloaked man who she knew was Naruto. GGGE, only to be cut off when the man spoke again. Don't worry, you might need to remember a bit more, but something as trivial as this can't even scratch me, he said, already knowing the seal on her neck was gone. She was silent as he raised his right hand palm outwards. Something weak would only give me a slight tingle. With that, to her shock and Kyuubi's surprise, he swung his hand. On the opposite side of the giant jutsu, Minato, Jiraiya, Tsukumo and the others watched horrified at what was about to happen. That guy needs to get out of there. Minato exclaimed, not wanting to have a civilian's death on his hands due to an accident. I agree, especially with a jutsu like that, it could kill not only him but Kushina as well. Tsukumo said. Wait. Something's not right. Jiraiya exclaimed with a narrowed-eyed look in his eyes. This god looks from them all. The teen with long dark raven hair and coal-black eyes, wearing the same thing as Kushina, Uchiha Makoto and Kushina's best friend, stated. What do you mean? She said, only for a sound for Jiraiya's eyes to go wide greatly. She along with the others followed his gaze and saw what he was seeing. The giant lightning-shaped hammer were slowly sliced in half by the hand of the cloaked stranger. They watched as the man just literally swatted one of the most deadly Raiden jutsu known to all away like it was nothing. Many gawked at what they just seen, but the sudden explosion from the destroyed jutsu blew up, making smoke blow up around the cloaked stranger and Kushina. As the smoke cleared up, it showed the cloaked man standing exactly where he was, with Kushina looking at his form with so many emotions as was impossible to identify even one of them. Tears did swell up in her eyes for some reason, to the confusion of the Konoha nin. In Naruto-kun, she spoke hesitantly, wanting to know if the cloaked person before her was the same person she remembers from the sudden rush of memories that she made that promise to, the one she was in love with all those years ago. Before Konoha separated them, none of the Konoha nin what she said except for one person. Jiraiya, and his eyes were as wide as they could possibly be. The small flicker of fear was appearing in his eyes when he heard that man's name. All records and bingo books were destroyed with that man's name, so the next generation would never know of the one that scared the great Konohagakure so much. So it was with a great fear that Jiraiya stared at the cloaked figure with a look of extreme concentration rarely ever seen on the pervert's face before. Tsukumo saw this and got very tense of what was to come, since he too knew of Naruto and his legendary status and actions in the war dating back since he was but a child. It honestly scared him to his very soul. He's never met him but knew even he wouldn't win that fight. No matter how strong he was. You just can't beat someone that has beaten a Biju single-handedly. Naruto heard Kushina and a feeling of warmth filled his once cold emotionless body. Over the last 10 years he has forever closed up his heart and bent toward getting stronger, always training and never stopping. To getting stronger and gain the one he loved the most back, even if he reclaimed his title as the most feared being in all of the shinobi nations. So it was a quick surprise when Naruto's cloaked form turned to Kushina and kneeled before her. I told you, I'd come back for you, Kushina. It just took me a bit longer than I thought it would, he said, but she didn't care. She just smiled happily as tears went down her face. She didn't care how long it took Naruto to come back for her. All she cared about was that he was here now, and wouldn't be leaving her ever again. Though she did wonder what changes he's gone through over the last 10 years, no matter how much he changed, she knew it was Naruto from the same familiarity and power she knew when she was a child from back then was the same even now, if only much stronger and perfectly controlled than before. Though when she looked at his shadowed face she saw his eyes, they honestly sent a shiver down her spine. Seeing such eyes, she wasn't scared of them. If anything, she thought they made the mental image she had of him from before 10 years ago all the more handsome. Naruto-kun, can I see your face? It's been so long since I've seen you. I want to see your face again, the face of the same man I fell in love with all those years ago, she said with Naruto gently taking her hand, rubbing circles with thumb gently. My appearance? You wish to see it? He got a nod from her, and with a simple flick of his hood, it fell completely off, showing the face of Uzumaki d. Naruto, aka the Kami no Saigai to Senso, god of disaster and war, and first ever Z-ranked shinobi in history. Jiraiya's face morphed into complete horror while his face quickly paled. It was like he was seeing a ghost from the past. The kid hadn't changed a single bit from 10 years ago. Indeed, Naruto's face was the exact same way as 10 years ago, along with everything else. Kushina, though, could see the disguise on him and frowned. Having her memories come back made her old fiery personality from back then flare up, making her usual one Konoha nose pale in comparison. When she was about to speak, Naruto stopped her by holding his hand to her mouth. Wait, Kushi-chan, first we need to deal with these bastards. Konoha deserves to pay for taking you away from me, and they shall pay, he said, his eyes shadowed by his hair. Kushina's violet eyes softened before flickering her eyes over her team, and frowned. She always wondered why most of them had that look in their eyes when they talked or when they first met in the academy, but she had no doubt they were put up to become friends with her so she would feel welcomed into the village. Her eyes landed on the only one she trusted even now, and that was Makoto Uchiha. Despite her being of Konoha, she was still the most loyal person she has ever got the chance to meet. She couldn't possibly let Naruto kill her. Naru-kun, please, don't hurt Makoto, that's all I ask of you, she said, getting Naruto's attention. Looking down at the red head in his arms, he snapped his gaze at the Uchiha and made a mental note not to kill her. But I will keep my eye on you. Very well then. You have my word, he said, only for their moment to be ruined when they heard someone shout. You. What are you doing here? I thought we killed you. Jiraiya screamed in pure fear and outrage. Minato looked at his sensei in curiosity before asking. Sensei? What's wrong? Who is he? And how does he know Kushina Baka? He said, only to feel an unbearable pressure weigh upon him, making him gasp. Turning his head in that direction, he not only found the golden amber slitted eyes of Naruto glaring him down, but also the violet ones of Kushina. Did you just call me a baka, Namikaze? Kushina said, spitting out the word Namikaze like it was poison. Minato gulped audibly. Don't fret, Kushi-chan. He is of no worry. He's as weak and pathetic as Konoha's other shinobi, Naruto said, knowing he insulted Konoha right in front of its very own shinobi. He got the reaction he wanted when the teen called Minato growled at him. What did you say? Why insult Konoha? What have we ever done to you? Naruto just blinked before chuckling. Standing up, Kushina watched when Naruto's chuckle turned from humor to hollow. It sent chills down many of their spines when they heard it, especially when his eyes seemed to glow faintly when Konoha was mentioned and of what they've done to him. You wanna know what they did to me? He boy, you have no idea. He shouted at the teen, making him take a step back. Konoha has all but angered me since I was a shinobi. They've lied, cheated and betrayed me and Kushina's clan for a century. He shouted louder this time. The Konoha nin all looked shocked except for Jiraiya, since he had a grim look on his face. They have angered me greatly over the years, but to take Kushina away from me was the last straw, he said quietly while grasping his cloak. Which they all caught, as did Kushina. When they took her from me 10 years ago, they all but destroyed any hope of salvation and have sealed their fate, with me delivering their punishment. With that, Naruto pulled off his cloak and in a shout of Kai, a massive pressure crashed onto all of Konoha nin except for Kushina and Makoto. As the smoke formed, they all saw a giant shadow before them, also pressure of some kind completely lessened to none. They all saw something akin to a handle sticking over his shoulder, making them think it was a weapon of some kind. When the smoke finally cleared up though, Kushina's face lit up like a Christmas tree, making the sun itself look deadly pale, while discreetly Makoto's face had a small pink hue as well, with it growing each passing second. Within Kushina mindscape, she could hear her old friend Kyuubi's screams at seeing Naruto's true form. By Kami, he's a giant Adonis. Kushi-chan, you'd better find a way for me to get out here so I can. The normally composed, now horny as hell Kyuubi was interrupted when Kushina's blushing face shouted mentally. Q-chan, I never knew you liked Naru-kun too. Well, we can have this conversation later, with Kyuubi cut mental connection, but there was already a big mental grin on Kushina's face, knowing her best and longest friend had feelings for her, Naruto. She looked upon the newly and to her true delight appearance of Naruto. She knew he had been hiding his true appearance, but she never knew he was hiding this. For in front of her and all of them was a man that by all standards was a giant, for he stood, at least from what they could tell, was 25 feet tall and muscular. Very muscular. If the sight of his muscles were the size of small boulders. His skin was a bit on the pale side, with it a bit darker than it was before, but still the same shade as Kushina's own porcelain skin. His 12-pack was full out, shown out to all, as were his pecs, and you could just tell you could hit him with a sledgehammer and it would shatter upon impact. His face was angular yet chiseled to perfection, carved by the gods themselves. His large arms were practically the size and width of an average-sized human. Though the other changes Kushina noticed were that of his hair, it was now surprisingly enough golden with black highlights within, with the spiky still there, only a little more tamed. His hair was long, with it going past his neckline and somewhat over his eyes. Though his golden amber slitted eyes now held a much more powerful look in them, making his appearance all the more intimidating. That's when they saw what he was wearing. Due to his large size, Naruto had to take matters into his own hands, where for his feat he had over the years had to take to learning a few professions like blacksmithing and tailoring. For now he was wearing his own custom-made clothing, starting with his black combat boots with black steel plating over the giant boots. Next up was his black cargo pants with the same metal plating, only this time integrated into the pants, making them much more durable but wouldn't hold back his speed. Next up was his chest, being completely shirtless except for the large tattered golden coat that hung loosely over his shoulders with torn-off sleeves at the end. Upon the coat's back was the Uzumaki clan symbol in its full-out true glory, with the symbol for protector and guardian interlocking with the Uzumaki symbol. Lastly, on his right shoulder was a crimson-colored pauldron with a design of some kind of demon with curved horns. Its mouth was wide open, showing it was screaming in what seemed fear. That's when they saw the sword handle above the pauldron and wondered what was behind the mont's back. Kushina and Kyuubi saw it as clear as day though, and right now Kushina was having a hard time not drooling over the sight of what she was seeing. Since she had always been a kenjutsu master at heart, with only her fuinjutsu coming out first, the weapon she saw upon Naruto's back was absolutely breathtaking. By the gods above, Naru-kun got that weapon of all things. Kami is truly on his side. Q-chan, do you know what that weapon is? Yes. Hell, most of the underworld and heaven know what that weapon is, it's told in legends, but that blade was wielded by a being that fought demons and angels way back. Whoa, what's the sword called? Its name is rarely spoken of since it brings nightmares to many demons and hatred from most of heaven. Its name is Chaos Eater. When the demoness said that, a chill of excitement shot down her spine of seeing the blade of legend upon her container's back. How he got such a weapon in his possession she would never know, but right now it only increased her arousal of Naruto even more. For the giant weapon upon Naruto's back was a giant Zanbato-looking weapon, except in a truly unique design. Its bladed side was curved with two short spiked ends coming out from the double side blade. Its inner design was quite terrifying when you look at it with a careful eye. It was showing the screaming face of what looked like ghostly souls forever screaming in what looked like either torment, anguish, pain, or all of the above. Its length was 20 feet and 5 foot in width. Finishing it off was that the sword itself was glowing faintly yellow. With the smoke finally clearing up, Naruto in his new and completely true appearance stepped to Kushina and kneeled on one knee. He ignored the looks he was getting from the Konoha nin, but did savor the incredible fear from Jiraiya and would love it when he start pulverizing the man into the ground. Kushi-chan, his voice much deeper than she remembered. Looking up, she saw the smiling face of Naruto, the one she loved with all her heart. It's time we left Konoha, he said with his hand held out, which she quickly grasped, and with a small eep from her hauled her up till she was standing perfectly on her shaky legs. Kushina looked at Naruto, well, looked up is the better word for it. She could see she stood at his legs in height, and it irritated her a bit on the inside. She felt so small. Naru-kun, what about all of Konoha? I can feel the Konoha shinobi converging here, what do we do? She asked him, only to get a grim smile from him. Let them comes, I said I would protect you and I meant it. I've been away from my duty for the last 10 years and I won't keep doing that. Konoha can try to take you back from me, but I'll destroy any and all that try. I promised I would go through hell and its 9 levels of torture and back 100x times over just to get you, and I meant it. He said, finishing his sentence with such much emotion it brought a happy tearful smile to her face. Thank you Naruto-kun, she repeated, rubbing her eyes of the tears. Naruto nodded with a smile before narrowing his eyes. Jiraiya shouted, appearing over Naruto while doing hand seals. Kuchio's no jutsu. And with that a giant shadow appeared over Naruto and Kushina. Looking up slightly, Naruto and Kushina saw the body of the giant toad Gamabunta coming down on them. Its eye filled with confusion at the sudden summoning. With only a second to spare, Naruto spoke. Kushi-chan, grab my leg, he said, and she did so quickly, wondering what Naruto was gonna do. As the giant toad came down, Makoto watched, being held back by Tsukumo and Sume. Kushina, Makoto yelled as the toad was but an inch away from crushing her and Naruto. Then the impossible happened. Gamabunta's fall was stopped and the toad knew something was wrong. Jiraiya in his desperate and fearful state also found something wrong. That's when they saw Gamabunta's body about 25 feet from the ground. But not going down any further. To summon this little toad, you must be desperate to kill me, Jiraiya. But you should. I didn't take down a Biju physically for nothing, you know, a voice that striked fear into Jiraiya's heart with each passing word. Looking under Gamabunta was Naruto and Kushina grasping his leg, looking up also with amazement in her eyes. Why was this? Well, it could be that Naruto's right hand was in the air holding Gamabunta's body in the air like it was nothing, with a bored look on Naruto's face. It couldn't be that though. Right. Holy Kami. Tsukumo uttered, trying to wipe the disbelief in his eyes. He couldn't believe, but right in front of him was a man holding Gamabunta's Biju-sized body in the air. With only one hand. Makoto was struck in amazement as well. She stared at the godly-looking giant with awe. This man, who was very important to Kushina, was holding a toad of Gamabunta's size in the air like it was nothing. Her curiosity was getting stronger of him for each passing second. Gamabunta's heavier than I remembered. Anyway, Here, I think this is yours. Naruto said, and with a swing of his arm sent Gamabunta flying. And I do mean flying. The giant toad was sent right over the Konoha shinobi and into the forest, skidding back, destroying trees and the ground. That is until it hit the Konoha wall and poofed out of existence. Jiraiya fell to the ground in shock. He jumped off Gamabunta at the right time, but now he was standing right before the very man he feared greatly. His eyes glaring down on him, making he was suffocating under the monstrous wave of power weighing on him. It honestly felt like an ant compared to a lion. You're pathetic, Jiraiya. Your fear is all over you. What a disappointment you are. Without waiting for a reply from the scared shitless Sennin, Naruto backhanded the man away, who of which went slammed into the forest, taking many trees with him. This of course shocked many. Jiraiya, a Sennin, was just backhanded and beaten so quickly. And this guy made it looks as easy as breathing. Whoa, Naru-kun, that was so awesome. She shouted in childlike glee. I mean, it's not every day you see a shinobi like Jiraiya getting manhandled like that. Meh. Jiraiya is pathetic. He may be a good shinobi, but he relies too much on his summons than his own capabilities. Now then, he said, turning his head to the remaining Konoha shinobi. Kushina saw this and looked at Makoto with a calculating stare in her eyes, searching for something until she spoke. Naru-kun, remember when I said to spare Makoto? Would you mind taking her with you? If there was any person I'd want to take away from this corrupted, arrogant village, it's her, she said, shocking Makoto greatly, while Naruto just looked at Kushina for a minute. But she is of Konoha, can we trust her? He said, only to get a nod from her. Yes, if there is anyone I trusted with all my heart, it Makoto-chan, she said with a smile. Seeing this, Naruto closed his eyes and nodded. Very well then, but the others, he said, making the others tense. Won't get the same treatment. And with that, Naruto's gaze snapped at them, and in a blink of an eye, Tsukumo, along with Tsume, and Jiraiya's students were passed out, similar with how Naruto dispatched the gate guards. Minato himself, being a self-proclaimed shinobi genius and strong-willed being, was lying back, foaming at the mouth with his eyes rolled at the back of his head. Again, pathetic. He spoke with distaste. After this, he looked at Makoto with a piercing look in his eyes that made the female teen fidget. Kushina, go talk to her. Ask why she's so hesitant with coming, but hurry, I sense many shinobi coming and I would rather like to get out of here soon. He said, getting a nod from her. With that, Kushina ran to Makoto and start talking to her of why was so hesitant with leaving. As she did so, Naruto moved his gaze at Minato and walked over to the unconscious teen. He grabbed him by his neck and lifted him up with a deadly serious look in his eyes. This one, I can tell, has been hurting Kushina for some time now. He deserves punishment as well. With that, Naruto balled up his boulder-sized fist and let go of Minato, only for Naruto to swing his fist and nail the Namikaze in the stomach, sending him through the forest like a speeding missile, shattering trees along the way. That'll show him. Before he looked over shoulder and into the forest, sensing someone watching them. Then multiple chakra signatures appeared within the forest. 300, number 400, and the Sandaime himself. Hee. Perfect, he muttered with a sinister grin came upon his face. Kushina saw this and wondered what meant by that, but the way he was grinning made her feel a little hot. That's the grin of a demon. Sure does. Reminds me of you a bit when the first times we met, but on him. Makes him look feral, handsome, godly, perhaps. More like a demonic Adonis. Naruto, not knowing of the conversation about him, spoke. Kushi-chan, hurry up. We've got company. With that, multiple thuds of feet pounded away at the ground, showing the arrival of many Konoha shinobi, along with Orochimaru and Senju Tsunade, the other two Sennin and their sensei, and the self-proclaimed Kami no Shinobi himself, Hiruzen Sarutobi Sandaime Hokage. That's when they all saw the damage at the grounds, but the source of their appearance was the giant before them. Many went deadly pale at the man. His appearance was fearsome in nature and his eyes didn't help at all. It actually made a few that made contact with his eyes keel over before passing out from the ferocity in his eyes. Hiruzen was staring at the giant man with a look of extreme curiosity. It's not every day you see a man of his height and, plus the way the man's aura just expelled power told him that this man was different. That is until he heard his student Tsunade gasp, so looking at her he saw how deathly pale she was while Orochimaru himself his star student was showing disbelief with his eyes wide as they could be. It can't be, he's supposed to be dead. He heard Tsunade utter this made him feel a little tense for some reason. Ah, they've all gathered. Good, I won't have to shun each of you down then. Naruto said, making them all tense. He started walking toward them with a bloodthirsty look in his eyes which made many shinobi piss themselves in fear. Who are you, stranger? Hiruzen asked, clearly confused at who this man was, but, to make his students fearful like they are made him feel a little more tense than before. Naruto just looked at Hiruzen for a moment, making the cage freeze in his tracks. The golden amber slitted eyes made him feel something he has never felt before, a feeling of absolute power washed over him like a tsunami, threatening to deflaten and crush him like he was nothing but trash. Who I am? Boy Hiruzen, you are getting senile in your age. If you were to read the bingo books you would know me, but I was after all killed by your students 10 years ago. Do you remember now? He said, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes seeing Hiruzen go deathly pale at what Naruto just said. No. It can't be. No, it's impossible. He denied it to be true. There was no way, absolutely no way it could be true. Yes, that's right, or let me spell it out for you. My name is Uzumaki D. Naruto, aka the Kami no Saigai to Senso, god of disaster and war, and your worst nightmare. Finishing it off with a demonic shout. Naruto just announced it to everyone. That he was back and ready bring disaster once more. You know it's can't nay. Hiruzen said, horrified at what he was hearing. That's right, fool. I'm back and ready to take Kushina-chan away from here the same way you took her from me 10 years ago. With that, Naruto took a step forward. Next thing anyone knew, Naruto was in front of Orochimaru with his fist already embedded into the snake man's stomach. The sound of crunching and shattering ribs rung around the whole area along with Orochimaru's painful scream. Too slow to react, Naruto brought down his other fist upon Orochimaru's jaw, breaking it as well as sending the pale man into the air. As the Sennin was in the air, Naruto drew back his other fist while using his right block Tsunade's chakra-enhanced punch, making a shockwave from behind him. He brought it down and rammed Orochimaru right into the ground, creating a massive crater. Taking their shock into account, Naruto spun around, delivering a bone-breaking kick to Tsunade, breaking her left leg and sending her into a couple of trees. Afterwards, he turns his head toward the oncoming group of Konoha shinobi and glares. Right then, a massive pulse shot from him, with it hitting the group of shinobi, making them pass out from the sudden mental attack. Then, without warning, he sent his right foot into the ground, creating a shockwave before a small upheaval of earth shoot up, hitting many other shinobi that were about to send their own jutsu from afar. Hiruzen watched in just a few minutes, this man no monster take out his students and shinobi like it was second nature. It actually scared him a bit, but he had to show no fear in adversity. Even if his enemy was practically a monster among humans and god among shinobi. Something he truly was questioning about himself at watching such a display. With Kushina and Makoto. Whoa, that guy is strong, said Makoto, wide-eyed at what she just seen. This guy just took down 3 Sennin, a man that is stronger than all of the Sennin combined, and now hundreds of shinobi, like it was child's play. Her curiosity of him rose up to monumental heights of him, and her amazement of what he has done so far showed in her eyes. He. Trust me, I was just like that when I saw him fight San back when I was just a kid. Naru-kun is truly very, very powerful, and I want to be there with him step by step throughout both our lives. Kushina said with a small giggle, seeing her friend's gaping face. Wow, you truly love him, don't you? I still can't believe Konoha placed that kind of seal on you, she said, remembering what Kushina told her and about the seal that locked away her true memories. It disgusted her that Konoha would do something so dirty just so they could get Kushina. Yes, she knew of Kushina's clan, the Uzumakis. She was also recently told about her being the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. But to Kushina's surprise, Makoto still saw her as a friend, something made her feel very relieved about. Mikado heard Kushina sigh contentedly as her violet eyes gazed upon the giant of a man she loved. Yeah, I love him as much as he loves me. You know, the first time we ever met was when I was just 2 years old. From that day on, I never left him, always cling to him like he was my own personal teddy bear. But now he truly does look like my big stuffed teddy bear, she said with a childlike grin. Makoto smiled while rolling her eyes. The Kushina was still in there, but a much more calmer than the energy ball she used to know was still there. But if I know Naru-kun, and if what you told me is true about your clan, he'll take you away from here even if he has to destroy and kill everything in his way. He may not trust you right now since you're from Konoha, but in time, he will, so will you come along with us? She asked, wanting to know what Makoto's answer was. The Uchiha closed her eyes in thought. The words of Kushina sounded so far-fetched, thinking that this man was strong enough to face all of Konoha by himself and would go through armies to do what he wanted to do. At first she was disbelieving it, but after hearing what he proclaimed himself to be and him throwing a summon of Gamabunta's size with just a hand made her quickly believe every word. Very well then, if he can help me then I'll follow him without a second of hesitation, she stated with a determined look in her coal black eyes. Kushina's face broke out into a megawatt smile. For some reason she really wanted Makoto to come with her and Naruto, and she just got her wish. Woohoo! She shouted, hugging Makoto tightly. The black-haired teen was trying to console her hyper-excited friend, even though she too had a smile on her face, knowing she was in good hands with Naruto and Hiruzen. Naruto heard Kushina's exclamation and softly chuckled. It would seem this Makoto would be coming with them. That's when he turned his gaze on his last obstacle, his truly most hated enemy of all. The man that took Kushina away from him all 10 years ago, but also betrayed the Uzumaki clan just like his sensei before him. The thought of just looking at this man any longer made him want to rip out the man's spinal cord and snap his neck with it. No, I'm gonna make Hiruzen feel pain, true pain, no use making it quick. Hiruzen suddenly felt a cold chill go down his spine when Naruto looked at him with those predatory-like eyes of his. Sarutobi Hiruzen, you're the last one. Your village has more shinobi than this, I know, but I'll just kill them as well. Nothing will stop from leaving here with Kushina. Not you, not your daimyo, and most certainly not your pathetic excuse of shinobi, he said, angering Hiruzen with each jab at his village. You may be strong, but that doesn't mean I can't take you down. This may be our first meeting, but I highly doubt you have the power those rumors claim you to have, he said, bluffing since he knew every single word that was talked about him was true. But he was trying anything to lower Naruto's guard just a bit. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto spoke, like I give a damn, I don't care what people say about me, I am what I am. Though I am a human that has surpassed all limits of what a mortal has and done the impossible over and over again during the years. Like my victory with the Hachibi, for example, that battle was something I wanted to do to get stronger. I did everything I had, I went to the extreme and still do. Making Hiruzen confused. Why go so far to get stronger? You're already portrayed as something akin to a god or a deity, why go so far? Was the question he asked. It was always on his mind when he first heard about the man in front of him. The way he fought and gained power. The way he always got stronger than he was before, how he would do the impossible and come out on top of the most outnumbered battles in history. Looking over at Kushina, Naruto spoke, I fight for the reason I live. My purpose, you could say, is to get stronger and protect the ones important to me, and right now Kushina Uzumaki is my most precious person in the whole damn world. You, Sarutobi, made a mistake when you took her from me. Sarutobi, realizing what Naruto meant, mentally smirked. So, Kushina is his weakness. Then would you really risk her life? He said, thinking he had Naruto cornered. Only to never know the mistake he just made. Naruto's eyes glowed murderously as his body started to shimmer strangely as the ground cracked around him and the trees themselves flowing by the sudden winds surrounding Naruto. The sky itself was swirling above him, churning it into a giant black cloud of lightning and wind. You dare threaten her life? Hiruzen, you're truly a fool. With that, a slight twitch from Naruto sent Sarutobi charging right at him, cages foregone for his shinobi armor. Doing a couple of hand seals, Hiruzen stated. Kaden. Karyu Enden. Fire release. Fire Dragon Flame Missile. A stream of fire shot out of Sarutobi's mouth, shaping into a giant roaring dragon of blazing hot flames. It sped across the field, burning the grass and making the trees themselves combust into flames from the heat, but, as the dragon came toward Naruto, the said Uzumaki just stared into the oncoming dragon's yellow eyes without a shred of fear. One word escaped Naruto's mouth that Hiruzen heard perfectly. Pathetic. With a swipe of his hand, the dragon was split horizontally, showing the bored face of Naruto in his smoking right hand. Hiruzen's eyes went wide in disbelief. That was his most strongest jutsu and was sure it would at least injure him. A feeling of desperation was starting to fill in his stomach, twisting and turning in a knot of the growing fear he was having of this giant before him. A jutsu like that is pathetic. At the age of 9 I was already advancing those kind of techniques into something better and more advanced. The demonic voice of his enemy rung around the area, only increasing his fear even more. Jumping back, Hiruzen made a hand seal. Kage Bushin no Jutsu. With that, a duplicate of him popped beside him. Reaching into their pouches, they slung their arms outward, making multiple shuriken and kunai fly toward Naruto's giant body. Doing hand seals at the same speed, they both shouted. Kage Shuriken no Jutsu, Kage Kunai no Jutsu. Making the shuriken and kunai multiply from 10 each to 100 each, all flying directly toward Naruto, casting a dark shadow over him. As the hail of weaponry was coming at him, he chuckled. Using such tactics, again pathetic. Kushina and Makoto watched as the hail of weaponry fell upon him in horror. Kushina remembers many times that weapons had hard time cutting into Naruto after all his brutal training, but the quantity of weapons being hurled at him could seriously hurt him. Naruto-kun, move out of the way, she yelled. Naruto heard her but just smiled and spoke. Nah, just watch Kushi-chan, I didn't nothing for the last 10 years. With that, the sound of shuriken and kunai met. Multiple thuds. They all looked in shock as every single shuriken and kunai that hit Naruto from where it was supposed to stab into him or scratch him just bounced off him, leaving nothing there. No scratch, no stab, no blood, no nothing. It was like Naruto was bathed in a shower, only in razor-sharp metal. Hiruzen's feeling despair only grew, seeing Naruto not getting damaged at all from the weapons, and his fear only rose when Naruto's eyes came upon him. Knocking out the Kage Bushin, he did a few more hand seals before slamming his hands on the ground. Try fighting me with this. Kuchio's no Jutsu. Anku. Enma. Monkey King. Enma. With that, a puff of smoke erupted from Sarutobi's hand, revealing a human-sized monkey with white spiky hair and beard. This made Naruto grin. Finally he could fight Sarutobi at his fullest and then break him at his fullest at the same time. Oh, it's gonna feel so good when all the hope Sarutobi has of winning this little fight is crushed beneath my feet. Enma blinked, his eyes slowly adjusting from the quick summon, only to see his summoner in a state he's never seen before. It was fear, but why? Looking at what was in front of his summoner, he saw exactly why. Hiruzen, please tell me you didn't just summon me to fight this man, exclaimed the deadly calm summon. He already knew who this man was. Hell, the whole summon realm knew, he who has shaken the very realm itself by beating a Biju of Hachibi's level. That was spread throughout not only the elemental nations but also the summoning realm. Within itself, this unintentionally got respect from many boss summons for Naruto, since it has never been recorded in history that a mortal of all things defeated a Biju with only his physical prowess and taijutsu only. I'm sorry, Enma, but I know the only way to fight him is with you by my side. Because if I don't, I'll most likely be killed, he begrudgingly admitted. Enma just grunted. Sarutobi, I don't know if I should just leave right now. this man before us is highly respected not only in your realm but, the summon realm as well since his feats has reached even us. But, with you being my only clan summoner I'll have to help you, which gained a grim smile from the old cage. Thank you now let's begin. He said with Enma jumping above Sarutobi doing his own hand seals before stating. Henge. Kongonyoi. Transformation. Adamantine staff, and in a poof of smoke Enma transformed into a 6-foot-long staff with black being its main color with both ends being a dark yellow. When it dropped Hiruzen caught it before twirling it around before setting into a stance his eyes glaring at the face of the enemy he admittingly wrong but, was for the better of Konoha. A weapon. You wish to fight me with a weapon like that? Very well then, I'll give you the honor of fighting with Chaos Eater, he said slowly inching his right handle to the giant leathered strapped handle of what Sarutobi notices now a weapon of some kind. With Kushina and Makoto they watched in awe as Naruto kept Hiruzen the Kami no Shinobi in a corner without even moving. The big bright grin on Kushina's face could make even the sun itself turn green with envy. Hell Makoto was smiling as well as she watched the person that was possibly gonna help her leave her cursed clan beat Konoha's cage around like a rag doll and embarrass him like a child. Ooh, Naru-kun's gonna draw it. I wanna see. Kyuubi shouted repeatedly like a child wanting its favorite toy. Q-chan, you have no idea how cute you just sounded when you said that he, mentally said a grinning Kushina. Shut up. The flustered Kyuubi said as she really couldn't control herself when Naruto's admitted that he was gonna draw his weapon. It was like an urge for her to just see him use the weapon that made her want him to quickly draw it out and carve up the old man like a pumpkin. When Naruto's hand grasped the leathered handle a sudden pulse of power reverberated from his back cracking the ground beneath him and making many trees break upon impact from the sudden pulse. Hiruzen Enma. Meet Chaos Eater, he said drawing his massive Zanbato demonic weapon from his back. And in that slow ever draw, Hiruzen appeared below Naruto in mid-swing his staff an inch away from hitting Naruto's stomach. That's when the giant demonic sword blocked the staff making it tremble chaotically. It was like he slung a sledgehammer at a steel door. Good Kami. Hiruzen be careful my head hurts. Enma shouted from within the staff while Sarutobi just nodded. No time to talk Sarutobi you're in the middle of a fight. A voice formed behind him spinning around he slammed his staff at Naruto only to hit his sword once more making an echo of clanging steel echo around the area. With that they both disappeared in the high-speed Kenjutsu battle. Soon metal versus metal rang from all over the forest of Konoha, alerting many shinobi that felt the chakra signatures being all focused in one spot with them getting ready. Trees were broken from the shockwaves of the two enemies meeting with their weapons each time. That is until a scream of pain erupted from the forest before Hiruzen's body shot out of the forest and into the ground bleeding severely from numerous injuries on his part, his staff still at his side but, cracked, showing damaged Enma was as well. Out came Naruto Chaos Eater over his shoulder with a deadly look in his eyes, the sudden spark of playfulness gone. He wanted to leave Konoha and he wanted to leave now. Hiruzen, I've had enough games, we end this now. And with speed Hiruzen couldn't even detect Naruto appeared in front of him his giant fist smashing into his face making dislocate jaw and breaking his teeth. With that though Hiruzen's body shot off toward Konoha smashing into trees on the way as well as injuring his body even more. With that out of the way for now Naruto turned toward Kushina and Makoto the latter looking at him in complete awe and amazement in her eyes. He saw this but, brushed it off for now and walked up to them for a moment. Kushi-chan, I know you're strong don't get me wrong I know you are but, right now you are at your weakest so I want you to apply this to your seal holding Kyuubi it's the great fuinjutsu I've created so far in my greatest work it will protect you and Miss Makoto here as well. He said handing over a small paper with an intricate yet complex design of a seal similar to the Uzumaki fuinjutsu upon Kushina's navel. Looking at it with a calculating eye she was talented and praised for by her father and clan she analyzed it being some kind of reversal seal of some kind. It being the same array seal upon her stomach holding Kyuubi but, much opposite in design with a few array lines integrated differently than the others. Naru-kun, what does this seal do? I have no idea, she said, pouting cutely since she prided herself greatly on her fuinjutsu, but this one just seemed so complicated. Chuckling a bit, Naruto turned toward Konoha's direction and spoke. Just apply that to your seal and you'll know soon enough. Enjoy, he said with a big grin on his face. One he has never done for the last 10 years. With that, Naruto charged forward through the forest, shattering trees that came into contact with his body. He knew he was gonna be charging right into the hornet's nest, but he didn't care. He wasn't doing this for only Kushina but also his clansmen, the ones that were betrayed that night. He's gonna make Konoha feel true pain. Kushina blinked before pouting. Damn it, Naru-kun is so confusing sometimes, she shouted while Makoto just giggled at how childish her friend was being. Well, aren't you gonna use it? She said, making the redhead stop before rubbing her head sheepishly. Right, sorry, my bad, kinda forgot, he. With that, she channeled chakra to the seal before placing it on her own seal, holding Kyuubi. Within her mindscape, Kyuubi saw the seal Naruto gave her and was still trying to figure out what the seal's job was. It was so much more confusing than any fuinjutsu she's ever seen before, much more than her first Kantainer's work. Uzumaki Mito's and her skills in fuinjutsu were godly at least. What does this seal do, I wonder? That's when Kushina applied it onto her seal before a bright light erupted from the outside world, while on the inside Kyuubi felt a sudden tug. When she looked at the mindscape, she saw it was normal but was gradually disappearing. When she snapped her gaze at the Uzumaki seal, she was flabbergasted at seeing, instead of being the normal lock and key type of seal, it was now doing the opposite and was slowly opening the giant gates within Kushina's mind. Realization came to Kyuubi's eyes and she smirked. Oh, Naru-kun, you're good. Outside, when the sudden bright light erupted from Kushina, Makoto had to close her eyes unless she wanted damage to her eyes. The light covered a good portion of the forest. It suddenly started to dim, and when it was completely gone, Makoto opened her eyes to see something quite shocking. Before her was a woman that by all rights could pass as a goddess and also the twin sister of Kushina. That's when she noticed the differences with the woman. She noticed the feral whisker marks on her face, her crimson fox-slitted eyes, which in some case was scary but nowhere near as fearful as the ones Naruto had. That's when she saw the two key appendages that made her know who it was, for it was 2 fluffy orange fox ears and 9 flowing orange fox tails on her backside that showed who she truly was. The Kyuubi no Kitsune was out, and right now she looked nothing like the legends proclaimed her to be. For she was right in front of Makoto, holding Kushina in a gentle hug with her 9 tails wrapped around her in a protective manner. She saw that Kushina was just as shocked as she was. They thought many things would happen when she applied the seal, but nothing like this. KKQ-chan. Kushina uttered, her wide violet eyes stared shocked at her friend she's known as long as Naruto. The nay, she never thought in her wildest dreams would be out here physically with her and never able to leave the seal on her stomach, which was shockingly enough gone. Hello, Kushina-chan, and my name isn't technically Kyuubi, that's just a title, it's actually Akemi. Kitsune no Akemi, he. The newly revealed Akemi chuckled with a sheepish look on her face. Kushina just blinked. Once, twice, 3 times. Oh, I so owe Naruto-kun for doing this, by the way, Akemi-chan, she said, still getting used to the name. Looking her way, Akemi asked. That's hen. A mischievous grin crawled up Kushina's face. Mind telling me about that little outburst from before when Naruto showed his true self? Or the fact you've been calling him kun in such a suggestive manner, she said with a teasing manner at the end of her tone. Akemi just blushed, knowing she was trapped, and this time she couldn't cut the conversation via mental link. Damn it. Well. With Naruto, the giant Uzumaki was just a few feet away from Konoha. Even now he could sense its many shinobi all converging on the spot where Sarutobi supposedly landed. He idly wondered if the cage survived the attack, since he did put some good force into that punch. Shrugging his shoulder, Naruto looked over his shoulder to see a bright light where Kushina and Makoto was. That's when a small smile came upon his face. Hope you like my gift to you Kushina as well as you Kyuubi. You deserve to be free from such imprisonment after everything you've done for both of us. With that Naruto jumped once more before landing on a branch overlooking Konoha. Looking over the city one might think it was peaceful but, Naruto knew better. It was in a state of chaos, the disorder and disaster of seeing their leader sent through many buildings and into the streets bloody and broken. He could see where Sarutobi went via the buildings he crashed through, going through a straight line and into the civilian streets. Perfect. He grinned, seeing many shinobi and civilian alike all at that one spot. With that he disappeared, leaving nothing but a gust of wind in his wake. Naruto was about to put his title to test and leave Konoha in a state of disaster and an open war with Konoha's shinobi. Streets of Konoha. Civilian and shinobi alike were all shocked or plain out terrified at what they were seeing. There was a massive crowd of the two surrounding the body of their Hokage, the fearsome leader that fought in all three wars, the man that was named the Kami no Shinobi. Was nothing but a bloody yet broken man, bloody leaking from his body, his jaw totally shattered but, miraculously still there and healable. His staff was beside him, grasped in his hand. They all could see the man was trying to get up only to fall back down to his knee. The shinobi all wondered though what was going on and what did this to their Hokage. Well, they got their answer when Hiruzen's eyes widened in complete fear. Then a second later, Naruto's giant form appeared in front of Hiruzen's body, scaring the hell out of them all. His gigantic towering muscled form made many pale in fear. His giant demonic Zanbato only added to his fearful image. Hiruzen, how pathetic you look in front of all these people, what a shame. Naruto said, ignoring the rageful looks from the Konoha shinobi. Or surprisingly enough lustful looks from a few women in the massive crowd. Hacking up blood, Hiruzen looked upon the man that he had done this to him. Taking a quick glance at his staff, he spoke. Naruto, to have actually come here, within Konoha, I don't know whether or not you're brave or stupid, he said, knowing when he said the name. Naruto, the shinobi quickly tensed, knowing the very name made his shinobi either ready for a fight or the weaker-willed ones quit the shinobi life forever. What does that matter? I don't care what I have to go through. I do have Kushina back, but this isn't just for her, this is for your and your sensei's betrayal to the Uzumaki clan. I'm here to rid that symbol upon your shinobi's backs. They don't deserve to wear it since they have betrayed us from the very beginning. He said, shocking them all, just not Hiruzen, who had a grim look in his eyes. But it was for the better of Konoha. He shouted in protest. Wrong thing to say. What did you just say? Naruto said with a dangerous look in his eyes. Hiruzen tensed as Naruto took a step forward when his foot touched the ground though. Hiruzen suddenly jumped back, ignoring his injuries, and slammed his staff into the ground. Everything me and the past Hokages have done was for Konoha's protection. Even if we sacrificed many, it still brought peace to us, and when Naruto's eyes couldn't get any more dangerous, they just did. You've signed your death warrant. Sarutobi. No, it is your death that happens today, and I will make sure that I succeed where my students failed. Out of the staff came two monkey hands along with the head of Enma, who shouted. I am sorry Naruto Dono, but this is my summoner's will. Ninpo. Kongo Roheki. Adamantine prison wall, with that multiple clones of the staff closed in around Naruto, encasing him inside a prison-like wall. Naruto himself looked pretty bored though with the whole thing. Hiruzen grinned, knowing he had Naruto trapped. Nothing could break that prison, not even his student Tsunade, and her most strongest attacks couldn't leave even a crack. Enma though did look ashamed that he had to imprison the most highly respected person in the whole summon realm. Dragging himself to the prison wall, Hiruzen spoke while leaning against his staff for support. You're done, Naruto. That prison you're in is completely unbreakable. You've lost, he said, thinking he won and had officially beaten the terror of Kumo Iwa and Konoha. He, who had bested the most nightmarishly strong being in all of the elemental nations. How wrong he was at the moment. I will admit, this is quite the prison. No normal human could break this, no matter how strong they are, he mused out loud. So you're admitting your defeat then? Hiruzen asked, perplexed at how Naruto was acting. No. I said no. Normal. Human could break this. You see, you've forgotten you little detail, Sarutobi, he said, making Hiruzen tense. What do you mean? Wanting to know why the man was so calm with the situation he was in. Naruto just held up his right hand, balling it up into a fist while speaking. Hiruzen, I was able to beat a Biju single-handedly, and not just any Biju, the eight-tailed Hachibi itself. Remember how I did exactly? He said, humor coming out of his voice. Hiruzen's eyes widened greatly, remembering exactly how he did such a feat. That's right. I did it with my strength alone, he said, and before anyone could react, Naruto's fist nailed right into the prison wall, making it creak in protest before giving in and breaking apart. Naruto then stepped out of the self-made hole and spoke. Now, I believe I needed to finish you, he said, walking toward Hiruzen, who at the moment was on the ground unable to get up due to his injuries, and that after that one hit Enma was poofed out due to the pain transferring to the summon. Without the staff as support, he was nothing more than a man getting on in age. Looking upon Naruto's form, his eyes glaring down at him made him truly see what kind of being he angered. He saw it completely. It was a being that swatted armies and fought Biju. He sees the rumors and legends of the man in front of him all true now. Now, die, he said, about to draw his sword and stab the man through. Stop right there, was the shout of one Konoha shinobi. Not gonna let this go on. Yeah, you think we're just gonna let you kill our Kage? If you haven't noticed, Mr. Legend, but you're surrounded on all sides. One arrogant-looking shinobi shouted. Naruto quirked an eyebrow and looked all around him to see all the civilians gone, probably taken to the Hokage monument for safety. He could only see a practically sea of Konoha shinobi all around him. Then the possibilities came and he grinned. Oh, so you wanna stop me? Then by all means, come and try. And with a massive pulse from him, 3/4 tis of that massive force was now passed out in the same manner as the ones before them that was hit by the pulse. The shinobi that shouted at him looked horrified now. Www, what was that? Stuttered a shinobi. Hiruzen, I think it's time you learned not to anger those that have power to kill you. Let me show you what true pain is, to see the things you love the most destroyed by your very eyes. Watch as your home is destroyed, just like I watched my and Kushina home destroyed on that night when you didn't come help us. Naruto shouted, and Hiruzen's eyes completely bugged, knowing what the man was about to do. No, he shouted only to fall on deaf ears, and Naruto brought his left fist up, showing a blue sphere circled around it, encasing his fist completely. Watch, Hiruzen, with just this fist alone. I will level Konohagakure to the ground. And with that, Naruto brought his fist down, slamming into the ground. Soon enough, Konoha started to shake uncontrollably. Buildings all around started to crumble or sink. The land itself shifting, destroying the Konoha walls itself, as well as the Hokage tower itself, cracking and breaking apart from the sudden shift in the earth from which it stood upon. With a sudden snap, Naruto brought his fist up again, only this time to swung it around in the direction at the gobsmacked shinobi. He punched the air, creating a shockwave, blasting them all away and shattering the buildings in its path. Explosions racked Konoha all around, burning it as the sky itself turned black from the smoke and ash rising into the air. Hiruzen watched all of this as this one man did all of this with just his fist alone. He truly saw what he had angered. Everything that had led up to this moment, all of his careful planning, has left his village in total chaos. Just like the Uzumaki clan was left at the hands of Iwa, Kumo and Suna. With Kushina, Akemi and Makoto. As soon as Naruto started destroying Konoha, all three of them were feeling the tremors and shockwaves coming from there. They were greatly curious, so Akemi had taken Kushina and Makoto and gotten close enough to see what was going on. So when they did exactly see what was happening, they were completely awed at the spectacle. Konoha was in total disaster. It was like Mother Nature was scorned and sent her anger toward Konoha tenfold. Kami, now I definitely want to go with you, Kushina-chan. Makoto said, eyeing the whole village she once served burn and fall apart. Why is that? She asked. 'Cause I know with the way this Naruto is, the adventures he would go on would be great, and living a life of peace is a bit dull for me, that is if you'll let me. She asked only for Akemi to speak. I don't think Naru-kun would have a problem, but he will still keep an eye on you for a while. You'll just have to gain his trust along the way, making Makoto nod. No problem with that, she said, looking over the utterly destroyed Konoha. The destruction of this village. Thank you, Kami, for giving us not only a giant Adonis but one that has the same hatred for Konoha as I and Kushi-chan. Akemi spoke, her hand held together in a prayer. Kushina just shook her head at the display while remembering the talk she had with Akemi, and she wasn't all that shocked to hear what Akemi told her. It would seem over the years she knew Naruto, Akemi had also developed feelings for him which evolved into love. And now 10 years later she still had those feelings just as she did, going on strong. Strangely enough though, she didn't have a problem with sharing Naruto if it came down to it, only that it was between her and Akemi, but there was still the fact of Makoto, and she does remember his form when she thought no one was looking. I think it's time we got down there and explain our next move with the Uchiha clan, if what you said was true, Makoto-chan. Naruto won't leave without paying them a visit as well. Kushina said, making Makoto frown. I don't care what happens to them, all of them are corrupt in their arrogance. Fugaku's ideals have changed the once proud clan I loved as a child into a shadow of its former self. I would actually like to see Naruto destroy them, she said darkly with anger in her eyes. Kushina and Akemi both nodded, knowing of why she hated her own clan so much. They were both told of why, and it made even Akemi sick to her stomach. The Uchiha clan elders, along with the majority of the clan itself, had become so arrogant their beliefs had turned into believing they were strong than Kami herself. Thinking they were pure royalty and should be treated as such, Makoto had been the only one to shout back, only to have the entire clan on her back. Fugaku had went to the council and made the decision of making her a slave that answered his every whim. Kushina had at that point released her anger by punching a tree, making it shockingly shatter to pieces. Placing a hand on her shoulder, Kushina spoke, "Don't worry, like I said, if there's one thing Naruto hates or than anything, it's what your clan is in treating women the way Fugaku sees them as. They'll get theirs soon, I promise," which Makoto just smiled gratefully while hugging her back as a tear fell from her eye. "It's time, let's go," Akemi stated, and with that Kushina grabbed Makoto and latched onto Akemi's body, then in a blink of an eye they disappeared. With Naruto watching in satisfaction at his work, Naruto turned toward the deathly silent Sarutobi, who was looking at his village. "I would have just kept doing this and level the monument Hiruzen, but I will be a true monster, for there is children up there that can change Konoha. I'm giving Konoha another chance, for the next generation can actually change Konoha for the better. Remember what happened this day, Hiruzen, for if you do and still keep up with the deceits and lies, I will come back, and next time I will not leave anyone alive, all will be slaughtered, understand me?" Demonically at the end was his tone that reverberated around the destroyed area that is the burning Konoha village. Hiruzen just turned his head to look at Naruto. He had heard every single word he spoke, and in the deepest reaches of his soul he was grateful. Grateful that the man before him was giving them one more chance. But seeing the giant man with the fires and destruction of his village looming over him, showing his deed, the golden amber slitted eyes from which glowed made him actually see an apparition over Naruto. It looked so demonic in appearance it made him grip his heart and soul tightly as he could, lest he has them ripped from his body by just seeing this apparition. His fear for the man before him was so high, he was seeing things. Right. You understand. With that, Hiruzen passed out from everything that's happened and to his injuries. Nodding with this, Naruto turned away and waited. They should be here any moment now. And in a second later Akemi appeared with Kushina and Makoto in her arms. Seeing the sudden appearance, Naruto looked at them until his gaze landed on Akemi. "Hello Kyuubi, nice to see you," he said, not really caring about the destruction around him. Akemi was in the same manner as well. Hell she savored in the chaos and death around her. Made her feel so at peace. Hey, she was a demon that loved chaos. To you as well, Naruto-kun, but My name is Kyuubi, that's just a title, it's actually Akemi, she said while Naruto just quirked an eyebrow before nodding. Akemi, huh? Nice name. Anyway, Kushina, did you find out why she was so hesitant to come with us? He said, pointing at Makoto. Kushina just nodded and explained. Well, it all started with her clan.